Welcome to my channel, where mysteries unfold, strange tales come to life, and the unexplained takes center stage. Here, we dive deep into eerie legends, unsolved cases, and supernatural phenomena that defy logic. Are you ready to step into the unknown? Brace yourself, keep an open mind, and join us as we uncover the world's greatest mysteries. Please listen to the story, The Man in the Green Hat, a lifetime of haunting. Some people live in haunted houses. But what if the hauntings follow you everywhere? From sleep paralysis to ghostly whispers. Something has always been watching him. My name is Edwin, and here is Ted's true scary story. My name is Ted. I'm from Vietnam, and I came here when I was a teenager. I was 13. I'm from Orange County, California. It already started when I was in high school, in the early to mid-2000s. We lived in an apartment for low-income folks. And really the first time editing the I've experienced was one afternoon when, after I got home from school, usually my parents will be at work. My siblings, they will be at school, so I will be home by myself for a couple of hours. In this apartment, once you walk in, you hit the living room first, and then on your left side you see the kitchen window, and on the right side is a hallway to the bedroom. I came home and I heard water running in the kitchen, and I heard the opening and closing of the kitchen cupboard. Thinking, maybe it's my mom. Sometimes she would come home early. I turned right into the hallway to go to the bedroom, just to take a nap after school. And I yelled out to my mom, who say, "Hey, can you wake me up in a couple hours?" And I heard her reply. It was a raspy female voice. "Okay, Con. Okay, my son in Vietnamese." Voice was raspy, so I thought, maybe she's sick and she must have a cough. And that's why she was raspy. And that's why she don't come home early from work. So I went to took a nap, and then about an hour later, I got a phone call and it was my mom. So I answered it and she said, "Hey, what did you want to eat?" Because she had to stay late at work and she was not going to go to cook dinner. And I realized that whoever it was in the kitchen early was not my mom. That time right before sunset, when it's still light outside, but then inside your house is still dark. It was pitch black, and inside was an eerie silence. And I told my mom, "Please come home early," and I was like a teenager. But I was still a kid. I sat up in bed, and I was so afraid. I didn't want to move, because I didn't close the bedroom door. And now, I'm staring into the dark hallway, and the whole time thinking, who was that? Thankfully, my dad came home only 20 minutes later, and I asked everyone in the house, did anyone come home earlier? And no one said that they did. Just chalked it up to my imagination. But it left a nagging feeling that it was something more than that. About 6 months later, I just gotten back from a wrestling practice, and I was exhausted, so I dozed off to sleep, and usually I had a radio alarm clock next to me, and I was fall asleep listening to the radio. This time, I woke up suddenly and not knowing where I was. I woke up, but my eyes were still closed. I heard there's music playing from the radio, and I remember I left the radio on when I went to sleep. I realized I must be in bed, so I opened my eyes, and I could no longer hear the song, and I was staring at the ceiling, unable to move. So I yelled out, "Mama." I could only hear the sound in my head, because my mouth wouldn't open. So I closed my eyes for a moment, and I heard the song. Song was on radio, so I knew that I was in bed. And also I know I was awake. but I could not move, so I opened my eyes, looked at the ceiling, and I could not move, and I couldn't hear the song anymore. So I kept doing that. I don't know how long. It felt very long. I felt my arms and my legs moving finally. So I was like, yes, I'm finally awake, and I was sleeping on the edge of the bed. So I thought, if I turn over and I fell down, it hurts, but then I would wake up. So I try moving my arms and my legs over, and I turn over, and I felt my body falling, and I felt the thud as it hit the floor, and I felt the shock and the pain of it. I must be awake by now, so I opened my eyes, and I'm still back in bed looking at the ceiling. I tried again. I tried falling off the bed again, and it kept doing it, and I was stuck in a nightmare. But a few times, I finally woke up. When I woke up, I couldn't trust that I was really awake. I was sweating so much, and it was that cold sweat, and my shirt was damp with sweat, and my heart was racing. That was the first time that I truly felt afraid. Is fear being locked inside your own body? Shortly after that, I had my first vivid or lucid dream. In my dream, I was at home, but nobody else was there, and the layout of the apartment I was in the dream, it was the same layout, but the furniture was different. It was older, it was dustier. I walked out from my bedroom to the hallway, and there was a fallen mirror there, with a diagonal crack on it. I walked in front of it, and I saw the reflection of a little Caucasian boy, with a bowl-cut blonde hair and blue eyes. I said to myself, this isn't real. I must be dreaming. I woke up, and it was the first time that I realized. I could tell that when I'm in a dream, or not. And it was one of those weird dreams. The next time I had another weird dream. I was floating around the apartment. This time the furniture in the room was in it. The house was also different than the previous dream. I was floating around. I wasn't walking. I went through the kitchen. I went through the sliding door in the kitchen to the backyard, and immediately I came face to face with a darker-skinned Hispanic and Native American man. No, he didn't look scary or anything, but he said, "What are you doing in my house?" And they're very confused with a very loud voice, like I could hear in my head. I was shocked, I could hear him, and I could see his face. And I woke up sweating again. And I was like, okay, maybe I was a spirit back in the day or something. It felt like that. Everything that has happened so far. It was all in my dreams. So I just thought again. And I wanted to have a very active imagination. It's just, silly dreams. And then a few months later, one night I was taking a shower, and then I felt someone watching me. So I cleaned the shambles from a face, and I looked out through the frosted bathroom. Sliding door. It was a male figure. He was in a light blue buttoned shirt and tan slacks, pulled up way past his belly, and a green hard hat. Very official looking. So I was like, oh, my God, someone is in the bathroom with me. So I slid open the frosted door. No one was there. I stood there for a moment. I'm saying I must have imagined the whole thing. I was so scared, I didn't even finish showering. I just rinsed off and dried up. And I ran out into my room that night. My dad told me that my paternal grandfather is dead. He passed away in Vietnam. At that time, I turned on Yahoo Messenger to communicate with the family in Vietnam, find out what happened, and then, a few days later, We watched the funeral procession on the internet. A few weeks later, we got a DVD from Vietnam, from the funeral, and we all watched it. And at the end of the video, there was a slideshow showing all the photos of my grandfather. During the slideshow, a picture popped up, and I had to pause the DVD because it was a picture of him in his youth. Volunteer uniform, light blue button shirt, tan slacks, and a green wide jungle hat. I couldn't believe it. My whole family is Catholic, but they do not believe in ghosts or demons or anything, because it's the house of God, and God wouldn't let any supernatural things happening. Just talking about it was not looked favorably upon. So I calculated what time that I saw that figure, and it was a few minutes after he passed in Vietnam. The following year, we moved to a different apartment. And the thing about Orange County, California is, it's home to the largest concentration of Vietnamese immigrants, and there have been a few generations that have been here before the 70s, before the end of the war. So we were excited to move to a new, more spacious 2-story apartment. At that time, I was going off to college, but I stayed home to save money. That's when the sleep paralysis escalated. I started seeing figures. I felt the bed move during the sleep paralysis episode. The stereotypical packmen staring at me. They had women straddling me while I'm in the sleep paralysis and looking at me. One time, I was sleeping in the living room on the couch, and I had sleep paralysis, and I heard someone walking up the stairs. So it was a 2-story apartment. So it's a 2nd story who had stairs going up. So I was, in the living room. I had sleep paralysis, and I heard someone moving up the stairs, slowly but intentionally walking, so you can hear them. The first step, dude, dude, dude. And a deep voicemail said, I'm coming to get you. And by this time, I'm used to it. So I knew how to wake myself out of sleep paralysis. I just used to shake my head really hard. And if I shake it really hard, I would wake up. I'm a very skeptical person. I like to think I'm rational. So I looked into it, and there was proposed theories on how or why sleep paralysis happens. It's the theta brainwaves, invading other type of brainwaves during sleep. And normally your body is paralyzed, so you don't act out your dreams. So sometimes you wake up and your mind is woken up, but your body hasn't woken up with it. So you're still paralyzed. And I rationalized it as it's just something that happened. It's a physiological phenomenon. It's not real. So I just kept on living my life. And with sleep paralysis, as you know, that is something common. And then one night, I was studying in the living room again. Well, early into the morning, around 3 a.m., I heard footsteps coming from the bedroom upstairs. That's not too abnormal. People in my family, they would come down for a glass of water. But this time, it was my teenage sister. She had a dazed look on her face. She was staring in a distance as she was walking through the living room, as she walked into the kitchen. So I thought maybe she's sleepwalking. And it's the first time I've seen someone sleepwalking. So I pay attention. I didn't want to wake her, because I read all the lore that you're not supposed to wake a person that's sleepwalking. You just guide them back to bed. So she walked to the kitchen, and she walked to the kitchen window. She opened imaginary door. She looked up and down, and then she closed the door. And she turned around and went back to bed. So a few weeks later, I found out. Incidentally, from the landlord that the tenant before last. They had a brown fridge next to the kitchen window. The pictures he took before they moved out. Because before people move out back then, they just came in and took pictures to see if there's any damage. He dug it up, he showed me. And there was a fridge, exactly where my sister was, pretending to open the door. And I couldn't believe it, because it was exactly where she was at, in front of the kitchen window. But again, I wasn't allowed to talk about any of this in my house. So I explained it away as a coincidence. I just brushed it off. It's early morning. I went down to the kitchen again to get water. As I turned a corner into the kitchen, I saw someone sitting there in the dark, at the kitchen table, and the figure looked like my dad. I was like, "Hey, Dad, what are you doing awake?" He didn't answer me. "Oh yeah, I got some water," went back up, and the door to my parents' bedroom was open. I was drinking water, and I looked in, and I saw my parents sleeping in there, so I stopped. I turned on the light, and I ran downstairs. Of course, there was nobody there. Another late-night study, and I was laying on the sofa with a laptop on my chest, after an hour in that position. And my back was hurting a little bit, so I set up to put my laptop on the coffee table, and just before I put it down, the table slipped like a good foot away from me, and the coffee table was. It was not too heavy, but it was heavy. I just held a laptop in my hands, and I was like, I froze. I'm trying to process what happened. In California, earthquakes aren't that uncommon. So I explained it away as an earthquake, But I knew that it was an earthquake. The whole apartment, everything would be shaken and moved. And not just one coffee table. So now I'm 2 years into college. We welcome into addition to our house. My baby sister was born. She was the joy of our lives. And I love taking care of her and spending time with her. When she was 2, I was taking care of her one morning. And we were alone in the 2-story apartment. And after giving her a bath and I put clothes on her, I was going to take her downstairs to get something to eat. And I had turned a corner. And I was a couple of steps down the stairs, and she was about to go with me. When she's turned back to look at the bedroom hallway, and she said, "Hey, look, there's a lady there." So I just grabbed her and I just booked it downstairs. Again, I played it out as her imagination. And I didn't want to acknowledge it. Shortly thereafter, we had a roommate. He was a son of a family friend. So he came in to study, so we gave him a place to stay. He shared a bedroom with me. Now, the whole time, there was always something going on in the room that I slept in. Things like feeling being watched, waking up feeling someone sitting in the bed, with a depression in the mattress, and especially the door opening on its own. So outside of this bedroom is a bedroom hallway, and there was a loose piece of floorboard right outside of it. So if you walk slowly, you would hear the creak of the floorboard. At around 3 or 4 a.m., almost every single night, I would hear the floorboard creaking. And again, I just explained this as someone in my family, just probably waking up to get some water. But the door kept opening by itself around 3 or 4 a.m. every night. Because I would just wake up with the door open, even though I remember closing the door before I go to sleep. I asked everyone if they opened the door to check on us during the night, and nobody said they did. I tried to rule out any physical explanation. We closed the window, so there's no draft that was pulling the door open from outside. We changed the locks, we changed the door. Then we changed the hole in the door frame, where the locking mechanism goes in. So basically, we changed the whole thing. Sort of changing the frame cause. It was a rented apartment, but the door kept opening. And so one night, we were up in bed. He was in his bed, I was in my bed. We were each on our laptop. And then we heard the door handle turning. We looked to see who's checking on us, but the door creaked open, and the door had no turn back. There was nobody there. The door was in this place, and you had to turn the handle and push to open it. Finally, I got up and I closed the door and I locked it, and I was convinced that there was no explanation for a lot of stuff. That was happening. The first EVP that we captured, my roommate was an amateur rapper. He would write and record a song. It was like a whole thing in the late 2000s. One afternoon I came back from class, and I saw him laying in his bed with his headphones on, editing his songs. This time he was staring at his laptop, and his face was like flushed, like he was like red, and he looked shocked. So he told me to come here. Put your headphone on and listen to this. So he had his audio playback open, and I saw the different spikes of his voice on the audiogram. Before those specks of his voice, there was one single spike. So he played it. The voice of an older man in Vietnamese rang land, which is keep going. And he was visibly scared. And I didn't know what EVP was so surreal at that time. So I put a recorder in my room later and went to school. I made sure that all the doors were closed. All the window was closed. There was no one at home during the day. That people either went to work, or went to school. So I got home that day and I listened to the playback. 4 hours of static nothing. I'm in the middle of doing math. I heard an older lady laughing. I guess from her age, she was a middle-aged lady. Again, I tried to rationalize it right. Maybe it was the sound from outside. But I checked with the neighbors. At that time, there was nobody around anyway. Went to school and went to work. It was weird, so I didn't try to record anything else. One night, I woke up in the middle of sleep, and I knew I was having sleep paralysis. I was laying on my side and was looking at my roommate. I said I couldn't see his face, because there was a pale white legs in front of it, belonging to a girl, and she wasn't my sister, because her legs and thighs were not as thin as my sister's. I put white legs and it turned around. It started to bend down. I closed my eyes, because I knew whoever it was bent down to look at me. I pretended to be asleep, but I could feel the eyes looking at me. And I woke up, and I saw my roommate laying on his side, looking at me, and I could tell that he saw her too, because he was scared. But he just turned away towards his wall and went back to sleep. Eventually, he found a place on his own and he moved out. I moved to the other bedroom with my little brother. On the wall, there was a heavy wooden cross, a good 10 pounds, and it was right where I slept. So it was right on top of my head. One night I was sleeping, and suddenly I heard someone yell in my left ear, "Tan." That's my Vietnamese name. I just jolted awake just as a reaction. I put my hands up. As I put my hands up, the cross fell into my hand. They pushed into my head. It hurt. I looked at my little brother, and he was sleeping. So if someone was really there, it would have hurt him. It was really loud, either in my ears or in my head. I was confused. There was a little bit of adrenaline too, because I woke up and something fell in my head. I put a cross on the table and put a pillow over my head and went back to sleep and try not to think about what happened. In Ikibin-doku's, we, the whole family, went back to Vietnam to visit our relatives for the first time. It's been like almost 10 years now. They always had a little vacation. I went to the Buddhist temple, where my grandfather's ashes were kept. It was in this little room, where all the other ashes were stored, with a picture of decased in front of it. There was a little ceremony, and it was very solemn atmosphere. And even though I was not a Buddhist, I put my hand together, and I listened as everyone else prayed. I was in the first row, and then suddenly I felt numb, like I was in sleep paralysis. But then while I was awake, I was unable to move, and I felt I was trapped in my own mind and in my own body. My eyes became blurry, and I saw a figure in the tan slacks and the blue shirt and the green hat again. He was standing where my grandfather was standing, and I couldn't see his face, but I saw his outline. I was shocked and emotional. I snapped out of it. I couldn't see him anymore. I turned over to my uncle that was standing next to me, and I said, "Hey, I see Grandpa." And he just nodded. It was more natural to accept the paranormal in Buddhism. At that time, I felt relieved, glad that I saw my grandfather one last time. So I thought at the time. We stayed in Vietnam for a few more days. It's customary to have a shrine in the house, honoring the ancestors. So basically, you have a place where, with all the pictures of your ancestors, and people would come visit and reminisce about the family members. The shrine was on the 4th floor. It was a party I was eating and drinking. I was drunk. I went upstairs to go lay down. I fell asleep with one of my uncle and aunt next to me. In 30 minutes or so after I went to sleep, I sat up. I looked at my uncle and my aunt with distant eyes. I stroked my imaginary beard, and I said, "Is Tam's family visiting?" Time is my dad's name, and I continue to say things that I couldn't have known about. Other family members. They called my dad up. I was talking to him as if I'm his grandfather. My dad is forever Catholic. But he went upstairs to the altar, and he lit an incense offering for the ancestors. Shortly after that, I fell back to sleep. My great-grandfather had a long beard, and I bear a resemblance to him. Even the mole on my face is the same mole that he had. That trip I had to go back to the U.S. earlier. Classes was going to start. I got back by myself. I was tired, and it was a different time zone, and I couldn't sleep. So I put on an exercise activity in the living room. I did an hour of cardio, and then I caught up with an hour of yoga. And at the end of the yoga session, there was a little meditation. So I closed my eyes, and the voice from the deity chanted in the And I didn't hide the volume up because, early in the morning, I didn't want to, disturb the neighbors. After a second on, I started to feel weightless and peaceful. And in the middle of the third, I felt a hot breath on my right ear, and I heard loud whispers of multiple voices. It lasted for maybe half a second, and when I opened my eyes and I saw no one around me, I was still a little disoriented from the meditation. I tried to recollect what just happened. Did I really hear whispers? So I called my friend. I told him I'm going to sleep over at his house. I've seen enough scary movies. It's a bad idea. The other person that believed was my little sister. The one that was sleepwalking. She came home one night. Besides, she's the one in college now. She was parked in the car and she was outside. And she saw my dad washing dishes through the window on the second floor. And she came up and she asked him, "Hey, was your sister here?" My aunt. And he said, "No. It's late and she's probably at home." Why would she be here? And she told him that. "I saw you washing dishes by the window, and there was an older woman with white hair and a bun. Standing behind you." He became defensive, and I told her to stop watching scary movies and imagining things. Eventually, I moved out of the apartment, so I would come back sometimes to have a sleepover. One night, I went to sleep in the room where the crash fell. This room belongs to my little sister now. My sister's closed laptop was in the room. She was away on a school trip. I closed the door. I locked it. I didn't want anything funny to happen. I went to sleep. Suddenly, I was jolted awake. Loud music was playing. I turned on the light and the laptop was open. YouTube was on, and I told myself it was impossible. First of all, the laptop was closed, even if I was sleepwalking. I didn't know her password to log in. Whoever it was, want to play a prank with me, or wants to know that, hey, welcome back. Eventually we moved out. I found out that it was not the apartment. It was me. So I moved on to professional school in another country. But my first day there, I was so tired. I just crashed on the bed. I didn't care if the bed was dirty or not. I just crashed. I was so exhausted. I opened my eyes to another sleep paralysis episode. I couldn't move. And I heard the door creaking open. It was an Asian woman. She was wearing those Chinese flowery pajamas, and she was young with a bowl-cut hair. She floated around my luggage. She went around it. Then she straddled me to put her legs on top of me. And she looked at me. We were having a staring contest. Her face was pale white. She didn't look evil. She was more like mischievous. She smiled at me. I smiled at her. I blinked twice. She blinked twice. Then she just cocked her head back and I could hear her laugh in my head. Then she got off me, and then I closed my eyes. The next morning, I told my flatmates what happened, and surprisingly, they were supportive, and they offered to switch rooms with me. And then I dug up the history of the town we lived in. And sure enough, there was a sizable Chinese immigrant population there. So, a year went on, I was in graduate school. One night I dozed off after studying for 14 hours. And if you're in graduate school, you're studying full-time for 16 hours a day. I remember it was a Thursday night when I went to sleep. And on Friday at around 2 a.m., I woke up with an uneasy feeling. And I opened my eyes, and I saw a pair of skinny girl legs, and asked myself, oh my God, it's the same strip reality episode. And I looked up to see who it was. I realized if I could look up, I'm not having sleep paralysis, I'm awake. And I looked up, and it was my classmate Macy, and she whispered Ted. And like a pillar of smoke, she just withered away. I sat right up because I could not believe. I just hallucinated someone in my class. So I went out for a drink of water to calm my nerves. I came back in to go to sleep, and there was a heaviness in the room, like the room was under high pressure. It was suffocating. So I turned on the fan and I opened the balcony door. I felt the same heaviness in the room. I just got up to the living room to study, and by 9, I was exhausted. because I would have been up 28 hours already. My cell phone rang, and it was my other friend. Jenny told me that her roommate, Macy, passed away in her sleep. Macy passed at around 1 a.m., and I saw her at 2. I can still see her in my head. A couple weeks later, I had another lucid dream. I was driving a bus, with all of my extended family in the back. So I parked the bus at a roadside shack, and I told everyone, "Hey, wait here. I went to check out the location of this shack right." I stepped off the bus into the muddy ground. I felt the cold, dirty mud splash above my legs. I was wearing shorts for some reason, so I walked into the building. Behind the shack, there was a courtyard, and there was a couple rows of benches, and a few old Asian men were sitting there. I recognized the old man in the tan slacks, and the green hat. It was my grandfather. I also recognized my great-grandfather, the old man with the long beard, and in front of them there was like a shimmering, clear, invisible wall of force fields, like it was shimmering. So I walked close to this barrier, and I pushed on it, and I felt the sting in my hand like a needle jab. But at the same time as I pushed on it, I felt it pulling me in, and I asked my grandfather that, "Hey, what are you doing here? You're dead." Hatches laughed, and the rest of them laughed too. Slowly, the benches with them started retreating back into the distance. I woke up from this dream, and I was crying, and I realized that that was my grandfather saying goodbye, and I haven't seen my grandfather since. After that, I got married. We moved into a house, and we had a son. My 2-year-old toddler slept over at my mom's place, and he said he wouldn't go downstairs because great-grandfather was there. As for sure, I haven't told him about anything like that. I haven't told him about his grandfather or great-grandfather. Around this time, he started having an imaginary friend, like all toddlers do, but they would only play at 3 or 4 in the morning. That worried my wife a little bit because, he needed to go to sleep. So one time at 6-7 p.m., and I was washing dishes in the kitchen, I heard feet running, and it was okay. My little partner. Why is he awake? Out of the hallway into the kitchen, a Caucasian white boy with bowl-cut hair and blue eyes. You remember this boy from the mirror. He ran out of the bedroom into the wall, and then my little toddler came out after him. I took a moment to collect myself and wanted to see what happened. The activities continued. At this time, we had another baby, 2 boys. I was holding a baby in the living room, and putting him to sleep, I was holding him. I was sitting in my chair in the living room, and the house was dark. There was a light that came through the window, probably from a passing car or so. In the living room, there's this liquor cabinet. The light shone into the liquor cabinet. I saw a phantom little dress that belonged to me, like a little girl or something. It was flowing in front of the cabinet. Because it was a glass liquor cabinet, not only did I see the dress in front of the cabinet, I saw the reflection of it in the cabinet too. I didn't do anything, because I didn't want to wake the baby. That's the time that I thought to myself, is this another haunted house? Because I grew up in 2 haunted apartments, and it was the first time I started to think, maybe it's not the apartment, maybe it's me. One time, I fell asleep and someone yelled out my name again. It was a younger female voice. It scared me out of my mind because it was loud. It was the loudest voice in my head I've ever heard. I asked my wife, did she call my name? She said no, and just went back to sleep. I didn't know what any of this meant. I am a laboratory scientist. I work in a hospital. One night I was at work, and I was in the pathology room. The hospital morgue is also in this room. I was cutting a piece of tissue for testing. I was concentrating on my work. Behind me was a cupboard. Suddenly, a few plastic fly holders and clamps came flying out of the cabinet, across the room, and hit the other side. It hit the wall. It didn't fall, it flew out of there. Violently flew out of there. But no, I was in the middle of cutting. I was in the sterile field. So, I couldn't leave, so I just said out loud, "You know I'm working here. Leave me alone." I finished up as quickly as I could, and I ran out of there. One night I have a checklist in my head of what I needed to do. So I'm totally in the zone going on to the next task. I opened the refrigerator with the glass door to retrieve a unit of blood. I got it, and I swung the door closed. In the reflection in the corner of the room, there was a shadow figure. It is solid black, wearing black scrubs, sitting on the counter in the corner behind me, crossing his arms and looking down. His whole body was black. I didn't process what I saw until a couple seconds later. I turned around, and there was no one in there. I was the only person there. I just dropped everything. I just ran outside. I tell my coworker what just happened. Before this, I would just see the phantom lab coat swinging in my career for vision, or occasionally I heard the disembodied voices or someone calling my name. But this is the first time that I saw the shadow figure. Usually when I do something tedious, I would have my headphones on. I would listen to music or podcast. I took my headphone out, went to the bathroom. I put it on the keyboard. I came back to the bathroom and I looked for my headphones. It wasn't there, and I looked all over. I turned the keyboard upside down. I looked in the drawer. I looked on the floor. Did I drop it? I asked my other coworker in the room if she was playing with me, and she hid my headphone. She said no, she was in her corner, so she went out, and I just spoke out loud. I said, "Hey, can you not mess with me? I'm at work," and returned my headphone. I got out of the room, so both of us went out. I went to get some water too. 3 minutes later, I came back and the headphones was on the keyboard, exactly where I left it. And remember, I turned the keyboard upside down to look for it. I've had this recurring dream where I was in the Vietnamese countryside. I was in one of the villages. In the kitchen. It was not a modern kitchen that we used to. It was a shack kitchen. There's a kitchen in the shack, basically. And it was a wood fire in the kitchen. I would dream I would help out with the cooking, stoking the fire, butchering the meat. And I remember reaching into the crevice. On the side of the stove, I can still see it. It was a darkened, half-burnt piece of wood with a fault crack at a handle. So at the handle, there's a crack, just to move the firewood around. And we wake up and not think too much about it. It's just another recurring dream. So it went to one of my trips back to Vietnam. That's one time we went to an ancestral home of a distant branch of my family. It was in the countryside, and it was a bit of a drive outside the city. It's a big property. I got to the kitchen, and it was the same shack kitchen. I had a surreal moment. I just stopped there, and I looked around. It was the exact same layout. The shelf was exactly the same. I felt a little lightheaded, and my arms and legs were weak, because could not believe that I saw this in my dream. Dejero is when you had a feeling that you've done this before, but I knew exactly what this was. I know the kitchen. I went to the stove. I bent down, I stuck my hand in the crevice. I pulled out the same half-burnt stick with a fork, crack at the handle. This was not a coincidence. I didn't share this with the rest of the family for no. Nobody believed. Another dream I had. My routine was, I would jog in the morning. One time, I woke up to find one of my uncles standing next to me and put his hand on my chest and tell me to stay home. No, I don't need to run today. He looked just like my uncle, but the only difference, he had a thick mustache. It didn't make sense if he was living in Vietnam. Why would he be here in the US with me? I called and I talked to my aunt's uncle in Vietnam. I found out that my uncle was the youngest in the family. My grandma had a miscarriage after having him, and it was a boy. My aunt told me that it could have been him. The uncle that my grandma had had a miscarriage, and then a few months later, someone in my neighborhood was taking her dogs out for a jog. She was run over by a car whose driver ran a stop sign. I wanted to make the connection, but the timing of the day was off. I drop in the morning. This accident happened in the afternoon. Later, I realized that if I was destined to get run over that morning, but stay in bed instead, then maybe no one else had to take my place, and there would be no accident at all. But yeah, that's conjecture. I dreamed about a family of 4, playing on the side of a house. It was a Caucasian family. There was a green convertible. Personal driving, it was one of those old car AGTO, and they were writing their initials in the year. In the wet concrete on the side of the house. I didn't see what they were writing, but I know that's what they were doing. What else would you write in concrete? And it was a recurring dream. I didn't pay much attention to it, because it's just a dream. Sometime later in real life, we were looking to buy a house, and the housing market in 21 was very bad. Then one afternoon, after putting our names down at 2 different houses, with very low hope we went back home. And on the way, we had passed by this house with an open house sign, and I told my wife, you know what? Let's just go in, let's try our luck. Went into the house, and I went out by myself. And I got to the side of the house, and just like when I was in that kitchen, I stopped. I was shaking. There it is, the green convertible, GTO. I walked to the side of the garage, and I saw the initials and the year in concrete. All of a sudden, it's like a rush of intensity. I felt everything. I felt the happiness. I felt the nostalgia. I felt a laughter. I felt a shiver, despite all the emotion that the property has experienced. It shared some of that with me. So the realtor revealed that the owners retired and wanted to move to the United States and needed to sell his house. Usually you need to outbid the other buyer. The price would just go up. However, the realtor told me that she was just instructed by the owner, just before we showed up, to settle for $20,000 over the asking price. So that's what we did. We offered $20,000 above asking price, and we got the house. The house has been good, and I haven't had any paranormal experience here. My wife asked me, "Hey, have you seen anything unusual?" And I said, "No, this is a good house." The last thing is, all the haunts that happen while we go on vacation, there's been 2 that are significant. So we went to Indianapolis to attend a cousin's wedding, and it was a large group of us. We booked a large multi-room house, and the first thing I noticed when I put up was, this is a very nice Victorian house. Oh, but it looks very nice historic. It was in the historic part of Indianapolis. So one night I went to sleep pretty late, and I was tired from a day of driving and attending events. My wife was in the bathroom getting ready to sleep. I closed my eyes, and the light was on in the room. It was bright white light, and I felt the room getting darker through my closed eyelids. So I figured my wife get out of the bathroom, and she turned off the light. When I opened my eyes, and what seemed like a second later, the room had a flickering yellow hue, as if the room was lit by candle lights. Standing at the foot of the bed was an older, white man in colonial attire. He had a saber or a sword by his side. I looked over to my right, and there was an older, white woman with salt and pepper hair, in a white nightgown. The older woman was looking into the distance, but the police officer was looking straight at me. I was scared. I pushed myself to sit up, and as soon as I sat up, the older woman turned to look at me. I realized I am awake. I'm wide awake. This is not a sleep paralysis. I closed my eyes. I didn't want to look at them. I saw myself standing on the sidewalk at an intersection. I looked up and saw the signs for the cross street. Pennsylvania and 22nd. A sedan was speeding in its cross intersection, but it hit a pedestrian. The pedestrian's face zoomed into mine, and I saw her face. It was an older black woman with short, buzz-cut hair, and then a name appeared in my head. Wendy. That's when I opened my eyes and I yelled out help. My wife came out of the bathroom, and she asked what happened. I told her what I've seen, and she said, "Let's just go to sleep." I was very unnerved by what I saw. It was 2 apparitions and a memory or something of someone getting run over. So in the morning, I looked on the map, and Pennsylvania. 22nd is 1 street over of where we stay. We stay on the 21st in Pennsylvania. I rationalized that. I must have seen Pennsylvania and 22nd on the map while I was driving, and I must have incorporated that location into what I saw. But I had no explanation for the Colonial officer and the woman. I had no explanation for the name Wendy. I Googled car accident in Wendy and that location, but nothing came up. I couldn't explain it. A couple nights later, I sat in the kitchen to talk to one of the uncles. It was early in the morning, again 2, 3 in the morning, and I sat on the table across from him. Behind his head on the wall was an oval vanity mirror. It was angled downward where I sat. I could see his reflection and mine. We were in the middle of a conversation, and I looked up in the mirror, and there was a dark, shadow figure moving on the wall behind me. It stopped, waved its right hand, and continued moving out of view. I turned around right away, and of course there was nothing there. I didn't tell anyone until we got home, and I told my wife. The last thing that happened was in Chicago, Illinois. I visited Chicago in 22 to attend for graduation for my master's degree, though we stayed at a hotel near the university. When we put up in a taxi, the hotel did not look exactly like what I expected. It was a thin and long building, and of course it's in historic Chicago, so we went out to the floor that we were in. I was talking to my wife about what we're going to do tomorrow, so I didn't really pay attention to the interiors of the elevator. We got off the elevator, and I looked for the signs to the room, but the first thing I noticed was how wide the hallway was. Usually, The hotel hallways is barely enough to fit 2 people, but this hallway was a good 8-foot distance, and it reminded me of one location. It looks like a hospital hallway. I told my wife, "Hey, honey, this looks like a hospital hallway," and she's like, "Yeah, it does. It's weirdly very wide." We passed a door frame on the way to the room, and it reminded me of the safety. Double doors that the hospitals would have. We made it to a room, and we went to sleep. It was late. I was fast asleep when I heard the alarms. In my head or in my ears, I'm still not sure. In the background, I heard people talking, yelling. I woke up to this noise. I opened my eyes then, and the monitor alarm was gone. But the background talking noise, it echoed for like a good second before it disappeared. In the morning, I told my wife, hey, I rationalized to my wife that the air vent must have carried the voices of people talking in the other rooms, and I must have gotten woken up by then. We got up, we went to breakfast in the lobby, so we got in the elevator to go down. This time I was fresh. I was awake. I read the poster that was on the elevator. So this hotel used to be the Cook County Hospital. It's one of the first hospitals established in Chicago. It's a Civil War hospital. They had the first medical internship, and I'm a blood bank and transfusion specialist. And Cook County is the first hospital with the first institutional blood bank in the whole world. I read about it, but I never looked up what the hospital looked like. The wide hallway, the monitor alarm, the people speaking. It made sense then that I would hear it. I didn't feel scared. I felt emotional as a fanboy, basically, because I was in a historic location. I had to have a moment with myself to realize internally that it's not all these places. It's probably me, growing up with passive family, where we don't talk about these things. It's hard for me to come to that realization. I tried to rationalize and disprove as much as I could, but I would accept the things I could not. With paranormal activities, you'll only get it if it happens to you. Auditory apparitions, they're fine as long as they don't make a noise. It's the ones that talk to you that's extra scary, because the second sense of hearing is more of a confirmation that this is real, this is happening. When you have 2 or more senses confirming that it's happening, it's no longer something subconscious. It's real. It's conscious. Just a side note here. Our storyteller today mentioned Wendell, a missing link in his story. He had no idea how it was connected to anything. Well, it turns out our editor and sound designer, Sarah Voorhees Wendell, got us scared today when she heard it. Was it just a coincidence? If you have a true story that you want to share, head on over to True Scary Story, and fill out the form. And if you're following the show, we'll get to hear another story next week. Anyway, thank you very much for listening. Keep it scary, everyone. See you soon. 1. Please listen to the story, The Witch Book. A family moves into a beautiful home in San Antonio, but what they thought was a fresh start quickly turned into a nightmare. Don't listen alone. My name is Edwin, and here is Veronica's true scary story. This dates back to August of 2018. My parents had decided to move from Round Rock, which is north of Austin. This happened to be a perfect timing for my younger sister and I, because I was transferring out of community college to a university in San Antonio while she was graduating high school and gonna go to a college in San Antonio as well. It was a beautiful house. It was a 2-story house, all brick in a gated community, which was super fancy to us. About 6 months into living there, things really started to pick up. Instantly, when you walk in, it had like an eerie feeling to it. The first instance is I was in my restroom. You can see the hallway, and it was a pretty long hallway, connecting all 3 rooms. I saw my sister walk out, and I said something along the lines like, "Hey, what are you doing?" Earlier, my parents said they're gonna go grocery shopping, and I thought she was going with them. But she didn't reply back to me. I started saying "What are you doing?" But I couldn't see her. So then I started looking all around the house, and when I went outside to go check if the car was gone, and I saw I was home alone, which just really freaked me out. So I kind of brushed off a little bit, thinking, okay, maybe I'm just seeing things tricking my mind. A few months passed by again. So now, March of 2019, it just became super bad actually. My mom got really sick, which prevented her from working. So she had to stay home full time. My room happened to be right above my parents' room, and so my mom was in her room a lot. And she would tell me sometimes or text me at least and be like, "Hey, are you home?" I'd be like, "No, I'm in class or doing something." She would tell me she would hear footsteps in my room, sound like someone was walking around, and she didn't think too much about it. She just thought, maybe, yeah, I'm just so bored I'm starting to hear things. And because of that, my dad got my mom a small puppy. He was a month old at that age. He was already starting to bark. At the bottom of the stairs. He was terrified to go up the stairs, actually. He will only go upstairs if one of us were with him. Already that was giving me a sign is something really here in this house? The attic was right above our room. Oddly enough, it was in this hallway. There was an entrance to the attic, and shortly after that, my sister starts to smell something super bad. My dad goes, checks it out. He comes back down, and it's a dead rat. But also, he finds this box. And in that box was a weird book of some sort, which had carvings into it. You could tell there were blood marks on it. You could tell there were. Maybe a piece of bone in there. As well, my mom's kind of superstitious and shows. She was already do not open that. Do not touch it, just go ahead and burn it. But my dad doesn't believe in any of this. So he said, "No, I'm gonna open it." He opens the book. And everything was in Latin, writing, and images and just stuff you see kind of in a witch book. And so it freaked me out. And my sister and my dad was okay, Mom is right, let's burn it. So we go in the backyard, and my dad just starts a fire and throws that whole box in there. It almost looked like the flames were starting to turn blue, like it wasn't from this world almost. After he did that, it kind of made the spirits mad a bit. More time passes. One night I was in my room, and I could hear what I thought was my sister calling my name. And I said, "Hey, what's up?" And she didn't say anything back. I go downstairs because I was okay. I heard her literally say my name. And not just my name, I have a family nickname. And it's only she calls me that. And so I go downstairs, I'm probably getting a snack. And she comes to the front door, and I say, "Hey, Warrant, didn't you just call my name?" She goes, "No, I was outside the whole time." And that just freaked me out even more. That's when I really told her what was going on. Because not only did I hear my name, but I saw her months before. So I tell her what was happening. And she just kind of looks at me blankly. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, I'm really going crazy. Well, my parents overhear us in the kitchen, talking about this, and that's when my dad says, "Oh, we've been hearing things too." They start to tell me that downstairs. When they go to bed, they always close the door. But they kind of stay up a little bit and watch TV. Say they've been hearing like footsteps in the kitchen, and they assumed it was us. Well, one night they got scared because that door closed and they hear big footsteps, like outside their door, and it's like a small mini hall that you kind of have to turn into to get to their room. They thought it was one of us, and so they start calling out our names. We didn't say anything back, but they could hear it breathing. Well, he got up, opened the door, nothing. And they scared both my mom and my dad while all this was going on. We were all just kind of keeping this inside with each other because I think none of us wanted to believe something was going on. So to hear that my mom and my dad and my sister, that we all have been hearing or seeing something, it was just spooky. My parents ended up reaching out to the previous owners of the house because technically my parents were renting out the house and the owners, for whatever reason, didn't want to live there anymore. Well, my parents just reached down. We're like, hey, like this stuff has been going on. Has stuff like this been happening to you all? When y'all lived here, and they said, oh no, nothing like that happened. But I think you should know this. The man had his mother living with them, and she happened to die in that house, in the room that I was sleeping in. When I find out this information, I think I turned cold. It just confirmed all the things that were happening around in that house to me, especially more towards me, because I feel like I was hearing the most and seeing the most things compared to my family. They also admitted that it was just her upstairs most of the time, so they didn't know what she was up to. But they were here late at night, walking around, talking, and they assumed that she was on the phone. One night, my sister said she was in her room, and she heard what sounded like me going through my stuff in my, like I said, we shared a wall together for our rooms. So if I was going through my drawers, or even turn on the TV, she could hear it. And she kind of just says like, hey, starts talking to me, but I never say anything back. Maybe 5 minutes pass, and she hears more noise coming from my room again. So she really gets up and sees that my door is closed, and was like, hey, like, I'm coming in to check on you. When she opens the door, she sees one of my drawers pull open. Right when she opens the door, but when she sees the drawer pull open, she realizes no one's in my room. There is only one instance where we all saw. So, something at the same time. October of 2019. Kid you not, it was Halloween night. We just got done trick-or-treating, and the front door actually was this glass-type front door where you could kind of see through it. So we had the front porch light on because we had just got done trick-or-treating. My mom's in the living room. My dad was actually out that night, so he wasn't home. But my sister and I were in the dining table, and if you lean backwards from your chair, in the dining table, you can see towards the front door. We hear the doorbell go off, and of course, in a 2-story house, that doorbell ring echoes everywhere. I lean back towards my chair from the dining table. When I see this tall figure, it's Halloween night, so of course costumes. And I was thinking to myself, maybe some teenagers are at the door or a teenager, because I could tell it was one person. So I grabbed the candy ball. They ring the doorbell again. At this point, my mom and my sister behind me, kind of telling me to be careful 'cause it was late, but also like, yes, just get the candy out. As soon as I open the door, nothing. The shadow's gone, no one's at the front door. That freaked my mom out the most, because she's always just heard footsteps and heard things, but she never actually saw anything. So when she saw that no one showed up at the door, after we saw a shadow, we could tell someone was at the front door. That just freaked her out even more. I'm in my room one night, I go to bed like normal. But except this time, my mom's dog, he decides to sleep with me. And he never sleeps with me, but he decided to. We go to bed, and I always sleep with my door open. But in the hallway, since it was such a long hallway, we had a nightlight, so it lit up the whole hallway. I could see, like, if someone was walking in the hallway due to, like, the shadows and the passing of the nightlight. We're in bed, I'm dead asleep, and all of a sudden I hear our dog start to growl. I've never heard him growl before, but he starts to growl. It wakes me up, and I look over at him like, what is he growling at? And I see that his head is towards my door. So I look to my right, and I see in the corner of my eye, there are these long fingers with like razor-sharp nails. I can see it through the shadow. And as it moves its fingers, it starts to crackle. Like it just starts to make like bones popping noise. I realized his fingers and his whole hand is starting to cover the light switch, which is the only light switch. I have to put the light on. I didn't have a lamp in that room. I just freaked out. I didn't know what to do. Like instantly, I'm just thinking to myself, whatever. This is this demon, this monster. Like it literally wants me in the dark. It's covering the light switch. I just got up and I decided I'm gonna touch it. Like I'm gonna touch it. 'Cause I need to turn this light switch on, and I did. And when I touched it, it felt scaly and very hard. And it kind of scratched me a bit. Light switch goes on. I'm hysterical. My mom's dog runs out of my room barking. Going down the stairs, I'm screaming towards my sister and I'm waking her up. Like, please. Like, wake up, you need to hear what I'm about to say next. Because I'm not lying. She's listening to me. She's telling me to calm down, like everything's okay. You're okay. I could tell she didn't believe me fully. But when I showed her the cut on my finger, I think that's when she kind of realized, okay, yeah, you're probably right. My parents come upstairs, they're like, what's going on? I tell them the same story. And I think they really believed me, because I was just so hysterical that I was not gonna sleep in that room for the rest of the night. When I finally slept in that room, if anything, it just made it worse for me, because I was having constant nightmares and terrors. Every night I will wake up screaming of like doing evil things to my family, which I've never had experienced that before. To this day, that really still shakes me to my core, truly. Because I have had previous experiences in the past. I am the most sensitive in my family to hear, see, feel things, but I've never actually had anything touch me, or me touch it that was like the pushing factor for me to get out of the house. I had a feeling this entity was just going to continue to talk to me and play with me, because it knew I was the one that could sense, see, and hear them the most out of the rest of my family. So I moved out after that. My parents and my sister both say like they haven't heard much or seen anything after that. I was so scared that this entity followed me, really, because I touched it. So I didn't know what was going to happen. Thankfully, I have not seen or heard anything since. But I definitely do get nightmares about it still. Me back in that room. Me just being so still, shaking to my core, feeling I can't move. January 2020. My family decides to move out. And on the last day, my mom, she usually likes to take video recordings of the house, empty just like for her records and just to be like, oh, this was a fun memory. So my dad takes the video instead. He's taking the video around the house. He's going upstairs and he hits my room and he says, as soon as he hits my room, the phone goes dead. It was fully charged. It was working properly. And it just died all of a sudden. And when it died at the same time, he heard my mom call his name. He goes out, goes downstairs, doesn't see her, doesn't even see my sister. So he calls them. And he realizes he's home alone as well, because they're gone. He gathered whatever he had left and took out of the house. He waited outside. He did not want to wait inside the house anymore, because that just freaked him out more. That was the last of it. We don't know what happened, who moved in after us. We told the couple that whoever they rent the house to, next to please advise, someone did pass away because things did happen. That was a spooky house I've ever lived in. And I'll definitely remember it. I definitely do sleep with the nightlights on. I do believe now that I am a stronger spiritual person. I do pray more. I got more into church after that, which helps me in my belief system. But I definitely get more hesitant when I do sense something, because I don't know if it's that same thing that's following me, or if it's something new completely. And I hope that I never experience anything like that. Again, you can get these stories without ads by trying out Scary Plus over on scaryplus.com and support our small team behind the scenes. At the same time, and also, please drop 5 stars for us in the reviews for the show, and we'll keep the stories going. If you have a story you want to share, head on over to True Scary Story. Links to everything are in the description of this episode. Thank you very much for listening. Keep it scary, everyone. See you soon. Scary, everyone. See you soon. Please listen to the story, A Bad Feeling. It was on July of 1987. I lived in the Pacific Northwest. It was during the summer. So it's really hot. It was July. It's really humid where I lived at the time. And it was about 12. I was on summer break alone. So I was alone in the house. They knew it was going to be really hot, so I wanted to make sure all the doors and windows were closed, because we didn't have air conditioning. My grandpa, who was in the hospital in California at that time, but they said he was pretty stable. My Nana, who's his wife, my grandmother, she was at home. She wasn't going to visit in the hospital that day. My uncle was over taking care of her. It was in the morning too, but it was already starting to get warm out. I started doing my chores, the dishes, when then I started vacuuming. And then I felt this really sharp tap, like someone poking on my back. I felt it a few times, and I was home alone in the house. I don't have any siblings. I turned around, and there was no one there. There was no one else in the house. The living room got really cold. All of a sudden, I had a really bad feeling. So I turned off the vacuum, and then I went. I just went outside for a little bit to warm up, and I did not vacuum the rest of the day. The run at same time in California is around 10:30. My Nana got a really bad feeling, and she went straight back to the hospital. She told me that when she got there. She took my grandfather's hands, and he opened his eyes. And then he passed away. It happened at the same time that I got tapped on the shoulder, because I remember them telling me it was around 11. I looked at the clock at our house, and it was 11 too. My mom got home and she said, "I have to tell you something." And she was pretty sad, but I already knew. I don't know how, but I just knew what she was going to tell me. I didn't vacuum for a long time after that. I'm in my 40s now, and even when I'm vacuuming in my house by myself, I leave a door open even if it's snowing here. I'm so still terrified. Like 30 years later that this is gonna happen again. My Nana said that she felt for the next year or so that, and my grandfather would send her messages, but no one in my family believed her, 'cause I just thought, she's just the grieving widow and making stuff up. But then in this time, it's a couple years later in like 1989, my Nana was gonna go visit my great aunt, who was in San Francisco. She was getting in the car, and she said, my grandpa spoke to her and told her not to go. She got out of the car and she called my great aunt. And they said, they calculated that the time it would have happened, she would have been on the bridge. And the time it collapsed, I don't know if you ever knew that. About the Bay Bridge collapsing, it was just toppled down onto another layer of the bridge. And hundreds of people died. It's really tragic. As with most of our calls go, I asked Tara if she had any more experiences, and she thought of one more. Here it is. My friend's friends got in 7th grade. It was summer. Got like a Ouija board, which my mom always told me, do not mess with those. Do not bring it in my house. I wasn't going to bring it in the house, but I went over to a friend of a friend's house. There's this girl, and she was just a little off. There was just something weird about her. But my best friend was with me, and it was daytime. I figured it would be okay. So we went over to her house, and we started playing with it. She started asking it questions. What's your name? Are you from here? Are you a bad spirit? And it said yes. So I was done at that point. I was like, okay, we should stop fighting like this. But she wanted to keep going, which was a little unnerving. So then she just kept asking it questions. Then my other friend was like, okay, we just need to stop this now, because we're inviting something bad into the house. We stopped, and we said goodbye. And then all the magnets on her fridge flew off the fridge to the other side of the house. I've never seen anything like. It was terrifying, and the house got really cold. We got up and pretty much ran out of the house, and I never played with her again. I think she disappeared a couple years later. She just stopped coming to school, but yeah, just a really bad vibe for her. Don't leave just yet, since today's stories are short. I am publishing 3 in total. Have you listened to them yet? They're up and available now as separate episodes. Also remember, you can share your own story with me over on True, scarystory.com, for your chance to have it featured. On an upcoming episode to listen ad-free, try out Scary Plus over on scaryplus.com. Completely free for 14 days, and then $4.99 a month, and you can cancel whenever you want. Thank you very much for listening. Keep it scary, everyone. See you soon. Please listen to the story Chased by Spirits, My Family's Paranormal Encounter. I grew up in this really tiny town called Cleveland, Utah. The house was known as the very first post office in this really small town when Utah was founded. It was so old that when we did some renovations on the house, we would cut into it and see that it was logs on the inside. That's how old it was. It was an old log post office. My mom and dad decided to create a bedroom in the attic space upstairs. They cut a hole in the ceiling and built these really rickety, steep kind of stairs that went up into this little attic space. The top right corner of the room would be where the stairs would come up, right at the top of those stairs. In the bottom right corner was my bed, up against the wall, right in that corner, right there across the room. In the bottom left corner would be my sister's bed, and then in the top left corner was my brother's bed. I used to see this really dark shadow every night. I would wake up in the middle of the night. Somebody was in the room with me watching me. I would open my eyes, and there would be this dark shadow standing over by my brother's bed. Staring down at him, it was the shape of a man, but it was just a really dark shadow. That would stand there. It would move from my brother's bed, and it would just float across the room, standing over the top of my sister's bed watching her. If I felt myself waking up, I would keep my eyes closed and wait for my brother to move, or wait for my sister to move, and then I would open my eyes. Then he would be standing right by me, staring down at me, watching me sleep. I was so scared I would take all of my stuffed animals, put them all the way around me, and then I'd take the biggest stuffed animal that I had, and I put it right over the top of me and tuck it in to make it look like. The stuffed animal is the one sleeping in the bed. I think around in my teenage years, we moved out of that house, and I didn't have any other experiences growing up until later in life when I met my husband. We had all of our kids at that time, and he was stationed in the Air Force, and he got deployed to Iraq, Afghanistan. He got deployed to Korea for a year. One of the funny things about me and my husband, we were really into the TV show Ghost Hunters. There was this one episode where they went to the Stanley Hotel. It's the actual hotel that Stephen King himself was staying in when he had those experiences. That scared him so much that he wrote the book, The Shining. This hotel is over 100 years old in Estes Park, Colorado. It's gorgeous. On this episode, they decide that they're going to split up into these separate rooms in the hotel that are known for the most paranormal activity. In the hotel, one of them is on the 4th floor, room 412. Back to me and my husband. My husband is deployed to Iraq. I want to surprise him with something. Just pretty cool for him coming home. He's been gone for 6 months. I decided I was going to book us a stay at the Stanley Hotel so that we can go investigate ghosts. I decided to book that exact room 412. We drive to the Stanley, and you walk into this hotel, and there's this big staircase. It goes up the center, and then it splits off to the right and the left, on both sides, and you can go up to the other rooms. Next to the staircase, it has this really awesome, super old elevator that is, one of those metal elevators that you have to close the gate on, old, rickety, and really loud. We get our key for the room, so we get in the elevator and we go upstairs, step off the elevator, and the room that is haunted is right next to that elevator. We get in the room and go check out the closet. This closet is 100 years old, full hard wood. It's got one of those really old doorknobs on it that are really hard to turn. It's super heavy. On the backside of the closet is that elevator. We check that out. We check the room out. It was really pretty. It had a really old bathroom in it, the really super old Victorian sink with on the inside. We decided to go get some dinner and walk around the hotel for the rest of the evening until bedtime. So nothing happened to us that night when we were walking around checking out the hotel. And we took the tour. The tour guide was this really cool old guy that had actually done the tour for Ghost Hunters. When they came, he was their tour guide. We noticed that on our tour. The guy goes right up to the room we're staying in, stood outside of the door and sit there and tell the stories about what happens in there. How people have lost things. Me and my husband are just sitting there thinking, yeah, we're staying in this room tonight. We even told the people that were on the tour with us. We're like, yeah, this is our room. We're going to stay in there. You guys want to look in there? And they were all pretty excited to go in and check out the room. And we ended the tour and went to eat dinner. And then we went back up to the room. And it was time for bed. We decided that we were going to go and take a shower. Together, we're in the bathroom, talking about how nothing's happened to us. It doesn't seem very creepy. There was 3 bulbs in this one light fixture above the bathroom sink. As soon as we were talking about this happening, the light bulbs all shattered. We got out of the shower and called downstairs. I told the lady at the desk what had happened. She said that they were going to send somebody up to come and take care of it. Things like that happen all the time in that room. I just don't know what could have caused that. They came up, they cleaned it up, they left the room, and me and my husband get into bed. And we're laying there, and I'm trying to go to sleep. This bed is facing the closet. So if you're sitting up in bed, you're looking right at the closet. I get this really dark, heavy feeling. There is something in this room. I open my eyes. I look up. Right above the bed is a fan. A ceiling fan? And right next to the ceiling fan, there is this woman floating there. She had a really long, dark hair. I'm looking at her. I start grabbing my husband's arm, shaking him, and I'm like, honey, do you see her? She's right there. And I'm hyperventilating. He wakes up, sits right up, and he's like, where? Where? And I'm like, she's right there in front of us. At that point, she starts moving towards me. And I take a breath and I'm like, hi. She stops, tips her head sideways. We laid down to go back to sleep, and I could not go to sleep. The morning after, we went downstairs to go tell the people that I had an experience. There's a tour guide there. And I tell her what had happened to me last night. And she kind of just, yeah, that happens all the time. It seemed like she didn't believe me, didn't take me seriously. We decided we were going to go look around the town and check out the hotel more. It's pretty big. It's got a few outbuildings too. We spent the day just being tourists. We get back to the hotel. My husband decides what he's going to do. He grabs this little L, no smoking sign that is sitting on top of the dresser, and he's going to put it right in front of the closet door. Slide it right under it just in case something happens. We go to sleep, and nothing else happens that night. The next morning, the closet door is closed, but the little LS sign was out in the middle of the floor. I'm feeling really uneasy about staying in this hotel and room because we had one more night there. I call my mom. I'm bawling. I don't want to stay here. And my husband's being a sweetheart, sitting there telling me it's going to be okay. We just got one more night. Let's just stay here. And I said, okay, we'll just stay because it was paid for that night. Actually, nothing happened to us. We just woke up and left to go back home. I would absolutely stay at the Stanley Hotel again. The hotel was beautiful. The food was amazing. From their little old-fashioned restaurant. And the rooms were really comfortable. Really scary, but really comfortable. I would not stay on the 4th floor again. Not at all, not in any of the rooms on the 4th floor. Forget it. Throughout our marriage, we have had quite a few paranormal, inexplicable things that have happened. After we went and stayed at the Stanley Hotel, we had moved out of the house that we were staying. At the time, We moved on to base housing at Hill Air Force Base. Cabinet doors would open and close. You would hear whispers or voices throughout the house. When I was in my room laying on the bed, I would be reading, and right above the book, I would see this little boy's head just quickly dash past the bottom of the bed. One other instance. Me and my husband were laying in our bed watching TV. All of a sudden, all of the stuff that was in there, our bathroom, fell off of the shelves into the bathtub. Another time that I was laying in bed, all of a sudden, I felt these little steps stepping next to me, from my feet all the way up to my head. And I turned and I looked, and there was nothing there. We decided that we wanted to name this little ghost. And I'm like, how about we name him Billy? At that exact same time, my husband said that in his head popped the name Billy. After this house, we had moved off a base. It was Halloween, and we felt this ghost presence had followed us. Because same thing started happening in this other house. I took my kids to go see my mom for Halloween. While we were there, I was on the phone talking to my husband, and all of a sudden he says, there was a little boy that just ran across the floor, down the bed, out of the corner of my eye. The kid ran across the room. We're sitting there talking about it, and then all of a sudden you hear in the living room the sound of one of my Halloween decorations go off. This Halloween decoration, it was broken. The motion active part of it was busted, and it was an old gravestone that would crack open and scream at you. The only way for it to go off was for somebody to push it. We moved to Montana. We had a bunch of things happen in that house. My children saw these things. My son Lincoln, he is very sensitive. A couple of days ago, I was in my room. My son's girlfriend. I was going to show her something on my phone. I was walking down my hallway, passing the kitchen, and out of the corner of my eye, I see my son standing in the kitchen. In front of the sink, his back was to me. I thought, okay, I'm going to go show Lincoln first. When I turned to look into the kitchen, he's not there. He is not there. There is nobody there. He comes walking in through the family room. In the back door, I explained to him, this ghost or mimic or whatever this was looked just like him. I have no idea what that was, but it scared the crap out of me. That's the first time something's happened to me, personally, in this house. I'm hoping nothing else happens here. I'm almost over the whole ghost thing. Haha, balding. We have had other situations where we would be sitting out on the porch. We live up in Willow, Alaska. It's a really tiny town in the middle of the forest. We have neighbors that aren't very close to us. We would be sitting out on the porch, and you would hear strange howls, moans, and growls over in that forest. Over there, across the lake, we're avid hunters. We know what it sounds like when a moose is in heat. Just doesn't sound anything like that. Me and my son and his friends, we always talk about shapeshifters up here all the time. Skinwalkers is a big deal in Alaska. A skinwalker can take certain forms of people or things. I don't know if it could have possibly been something like that. I can't tell you. I really have no idea what it could possibly have been. I don't know if it's the places that we've lived in, or if it's because my side of the family, you know, is so sensitive to ghosts, or if it's Lincoln himself. If he attracts these things coming to us, everywhere that we've been, in all of the houses that we've lived in, I haven't really been very scared, even though we've had these experiences happen to us. Every time I'm thinking that we're in a new place, it's going to be great. There's nothing going to happen. Then something happens. You can share your story with us over at True, Scary Storycom, and to listen without ads and support the show at the same time. Visit scaryplus.com. If you're following the show, I'll talk to you next week. Thank you very much for listening. Keep it scary, everyone. See you soon. Everyone, see you soon. Everyone, please listen to the story Footprints and Walking in the Dark. I grew up in the Philippines. I moved to the U.S. 13 years ago. I was around 23 when I migrated. I spent my childhood and early adulthood back home. In the Philippines, a lot of people believe in ghosts, mythical creatures, spirits. My very first memory was when I was 7 years old, when I used to live in a town called Muntinlupa City, which is in the Metro Manila area. I remember our house being huge, but as a child, everything is bigger than us. I remember having a big living room that led to the kitchen and stairs that went up to the second floor with 2 big bedrooms. My parents would sleep on their bed, and me and my 2 younger brothers. And Grandma would sleep on the floor in the same bedroom. And this is pretty much a cultural thing, where extended families could still be living with you. Most households are like this anyways. The second bedroom. We were renting it to 2 other girls, and one time one of the renters went on vacation and the renter asked me if I could sleep in their bedroom. I got so excited because I get to sleep on a bed by myself. That night I got ready for bed, and I remember I fell asleep right away. Eventually, for some reason, I woke up in the middle of the night. I know it was late because I could tell that my parents' bedroom lights were off. However, I can hear people downstairs. There was some party of some sort. I can hear someone going up and down the stairs. I can hear people talking. I can even hear music playing. I wanted to shout and call my mom, but every time I would open my mouth, there was nothing coming out. I can't even whisper. There was a coat hanger close to the door. A big hat and hoodies were hanging on the coat rack. I could see a set of ice. They don't look like normal eyes, though, as they are just red, big, bright red eyes. I was so scared. I decided to cover myself with a blanket and prayed until I fell asleep. I told my mother what happened the next day, and she believed me. She said there was a thick that night. Ethik is a bird-like creatures of death that prowl the night in search for food. So that's one of Filipino mythical creatures that we believe in. Eventually, me and my family moved out of the house and moved to another city. My parents received a piece of land from their godparents and built a small house. Next to our house is my grandparents' house, and they just started building their own house there as well. I have so many stories from this house, from the moment we moved in, as they were building my grandparents' house, and up until everything was done. Me and my family were experiencing a lot of unexplainable things. The most unforgettable one was during time, when they were still building my grandparents' house. I was probably a teenager by this time, maybe around 13 or 14. I remember this was in the middle of the day. We just got done eating lunch. One of the construction workers started looking at our shoes and flip-flops right outside the door of our house. My mother was like, "What are you doing? What are you looking for?" The guy was not happy. He said that he just laid fresh cement on the stairs, and someone used the stairs and left footprints on the wet cement. My mom was not happy with that accusation. So me, my mom, and my other grandma, we went to go and check it out. When we got to my grandparents' house, We all saw little footprints on the wet cement, on the stairs. Whoever it was, whatever it was, left footprints on, at least 3 to 4 steps from the second floor, where the bedrooms are down. It looked like it was coming down from the second floor, and it just gave us goosebumps. Goosebumps will crawl from the back of my neck. I think the footprints, they look like they're about the size of a year, or 2-year-old infant actual baby. We all don't know how to react. I remember my other grandma and my mom, seeing their hair standing on their arms, and the guy, the construction worker, was just laughing because, he saw the sizes of our shoes and our flip-flops. They're not. They're too big for that size of the footprints. Whatever is on the wet cement, it's just too big. Can't be ours. And plus, we know we would get in trouble, so we would not do anything like that. Maybe after a year or 2, my grandparents' house was constructed. I can't remember the reason, but I spent the night at my grandma's and slept in one of my aunt's bedrooms. I remember she has a queen-size bed. My aunt's queen-size bed was next to the wall, and she slept on the side, next to the wall, while I slept on the side that was closer to the door. In the middle of that night, I felt something was slowly moving my arm. It was holding me from my wrist, and I remember feeling the thumb and the middle finger on my wrist. It slowly lifted up my arm, and I felt it, so I turned around to my other side, where my aunt was lying down, and she was just asleep, so there was no way it was her that grabbed me. I didn't think much of it. I told my mother the next day, but I don't think she believed me at the time, saying that it was just probably a dream. When my aunt, who was living in Japan, came home for a visit, I spent the night in her bedroom, and when we woke up the next morning, there were baby handprints and lip marks on the mirror, and we know it's their baby's prints, handprints and lip marks, because they're so tiny, like literally baby handprint, same as the size, as tiny as those footprints that we saw on the cement. A little backstory. Years prior to completing the construction of the house, my aunt, who was living in Japan, she had a miscarriage. That was supposedly her first child, and we believe it might be that baby. Maybe trying to communicate, possibly looking for love, being playful and saying, "Hey, I'm still around." When she had a miscarriage, they had to put the baby in a box for maybe a week or 2 and left it at their house as they were trying to prepare for the funeral. For the baby, I feel like that was a mistake, because why would you just leave the baby by itself without, I don't know, I just thought that was wrong. I felt like the baby should have been put to rest as early as possible. But it's nobody's fault, it's just different. That Filipinos just handle death differently. In the Philippines, it typically takes weeks to put our dead people to rest. This upcoming story deals with another visitor at night. The story is called Walking in the Dark, and it is coming up right after this stay with us. Here it is. This is Olivia's true scary story. The house that I grew up in always consisted of myself, my mom, my aunt, and my grandmother. There wasn't really anything scary about this house. We would get the occasional movement of a glass. Sometimes you would hear things, but you never thought anything of it. You just push it off as, oh, it's nothing, not really thinking about it. Was until when I got into middle school, is when I started believing more and more that there's something other than us in this world. It was early morning. I was getting ready to go to school. My mom was getting ready to go to work. So was my aunt. My grandmother was still sleeping. Nice little October day. As I was getting ready, my mom had got me all situated and everything. And she was like, I'm gonna go finish getting ready. She was in the other bathroom, so I was like, okay. My aunt was in her room, getting ready. Grandma was still asleep. I thought that I had heard something before, but like rustling in the living room. But I thought maybe it's just my mom. She forgot something. Or I'm hearing it come from the bathroom, because I knew she was in there. And so was my hand in her room. So then all of a sudden I heard like this rustling, like pants, like jeans, and how they make those noises of that rustling sound of movement in the living room. It started right in the middle of the living room. In our living room, once you walked in the front door, it was set up as you walked in. The living room is right there as you walked in. Then you walk a little bit more too. On your right side, you come in and there's 2 rooms and a bathroom. Go the other direction on your left. You have the living room, and that was carpeted. And then, after you go past the living room, there was the linoleum floor to get into the kitchen. And then after that was the last bedroom and bathroom. So it started out in the middle of the living room. This pant sounds like rustling movement. And I even called out, and I told cause I thought it was my mom. And I was like, you're still there, huh? I heard nothing. The footsteps and the rustling came to the very edge of where the carbon linoleum meet. So I didn't move, because I thought maybe I'll get a response. And I didn't get any kind of response whatsoever. And at this point, I'm like scared beyond compare. Like I didn't even move, because I didn't move. I didn't look, because I didn't want to see what I might see. Finally, I was like, okay. I'm like, I gotta go and get up, and I gotta look, and I gotta see what's going on. Who is in the living room that's playing with me? I go towards the little entryway into where the arch is, into the kitchen. I look, there's nothing. There's no one. There's nothing. My mom is still in the bathroom. My aunt is still getting ready in her room. I go sit down because I'm like, this is beyond freaky. I'm like, how? So then my mom comes and she's like, what's wrong? So I started telling her what I heard and she's like, what? I go, yeah. I said wrestling. I even animated the noise. I said because this is what I'm hearing. I said, but then, when I went to go look, I said, there was nothing, there's nobody. So she equally got freaked out as much as I did. My room on the doorway had those beads that everybody had at one point, because everybody thought that they were cool. I had those, and I had them on my doorway. And every time you moved or you pulled them aside, they would make that nice little sound of like beads rustling. So anytime they moved them, they would make noise at that time. I also had an inflatable chair that no matter what, that thing always deflated. No matter what I did, it always deflated. It was just one of those chairs. Every night, I would always put like my bedding on top of that chair, that inflatable chair, because I had nowhere else to put it. But I always made sure that I always moved it away from the wall, so that way it wouldn't like squink or get rubbed or anything against the wall and freak anybody out. So this one particular night, we had all gotten ready for bed and everything. My mom was the last to get ready for bed. I could see her, I could hear her and everything. And then finally she was like, night. We're all like night. Maybe 10-15 minutes later, I hear that rustling sound again, like somebody is walking. In our hall leading into our bedrooms was all carpet. You could hear it even more. And I was like, maybe it's my mom. I'm like, maybe she forgot something, or maybe she... Instead of going all the way back to the other side of the house, where her bedroom was, she just needed to come back and grab water, or something. But then I heard the beads on my doorway, like they kind of parted, and as they parted, you can hear that beating, moving, and clinking together. It was very light, but I could still hear it. I opened one eye, because I was like, really? I'm like, maybe she forgot something. I looked, and I opened my eye, and I could see 4 of the strings of beads from my doorway, swaying back and forth. I got freaked out at this point. I'm like, maybe she touched it on her way. But mind you, that was like maybe 15 minutes before. I'm like, I'm not gonna think about it. It's late. I'm just gonna go to sleep. Again, I hear rustling, like actual somebody's walking. It starts from my doorway, moves past my TV to that inflammable chair that I have. I hear somebody, as if somebody sat down in this chair. As you sat down in this chair, sometimes if you were against the wall and you, even though you were away from the wall, the way that you sat down, you would still somehow back up. So you would hear that squeaking sound of the chair rubbing up against the wall. I'm at this point so scared out of my mind. I don't look. I don't call out. I don't do anything. I cover my head, scared as all can be, and I just leave it. So I think I must have fallen asleep. Next morning, I wake up. It's the week. It's a Saturday morning. I wake up, and as soon as I wake up, I instantly remember what I heard the night before. I'm like, I gotta check out this chair. Sure enough, it is like somebody had sat in the chair, because it was pushed up against the wall, which I had known that. I hadn't pushed it against the wall the night before, and like no way could my mom have come back, touched those beads, and then left without me hearing her or seeing her. I told my mom and my aunt the next morning. They were freaked out. I was freaked out, or like, yep, nope, we're not. And we're like, maybe because my grandfather had passed away years ago when I was the age of 2. And they have a theory, I have this theory, that maybe it was my grandfather checking on me, making sure that I was okay. Wasn't until a couple years after that, after I graduated, after I got finished with middle school, and then graduated from high school. We ended up moving to a new house, newly built, so I knew that it didn't have anything. And all of a sudden, we were all sitting there one day around the table, in our dining room table, my mom, my aunt, me, my grandmother. The doorbell rings. We look, there's nobody. But it wasn't like the hard doorbell ring as I feel like sit really super hard. Makes that really loud doorbell he knows. One of us went to go look. There is nobody there. Again. I think that it was my grandfather checking on us again, just saying, hey, I'm here. Thank you very much for listening. See you soon. See you soon. See you. Please listen to the story. There's something in the closet. I grew up in a small town called Lake Los Angeles. It's 30 minutes away from Lancaster, an hour away from Los Angeles. This house was bought by my dad. He built it up. Whatever was in that house didn't come from the land. It came from something I didn't know. The first encounters, I would be outside playing or be alone. I would hear my mom call me. I would run to her. This happened countless times. My mom would be like, no, I didn't call you. What are you talking about? I do recall the feeling of being watched, being afraid to be alone. I was really scared of being alone. Even as a toddler, as a baby, I was scared of being alone in that house. I was in 3rd grade. I was sitting down next to my bed folding my clothes. My closet was wide open. I felt something in my head was like, "Oh, look at the closet." As I turned around, my hangers start moving, like somebody is looking for clothes. I stood frozen when I could react. I ran out of my room and went to go tell my mom. My mom was like, "Oh no, you're probably just imagining things." It was probably just the AC. It was probably just the wind. But there was nothing on No Fans. Nothing that could explain that. After that, I can't remember much. Just being really scared of being alone. I was really terrified of my closet. I would close my closet at night, wake up, and the part of the closet was open. It was a sliding door closet. It was open, like if somebody could peek through. I would gaslight myself. Oh, maybe I didn't close it right. But now thinking back on it, I would close my closet right, because I was very scared. I was in 4th grade when I actually started seeing whatever was in the house. My dad had an office room. Our hallway was really long. It just had doors. I was sitting there in my room watching TV. My dad was in his office earlier. I never saw him leave. But all of a sudden, I did see him walk by. I was going to ask my dad, "Hey, can I play pinball on the computer? Or go on Club Penguin?" I walked into the office. It was just pitch black. When I had just seen whatever that figure was walk into that room, that's when I was like, there's something wrong in this house. I saw that figure go into the room. Since the hallway was dark, the room was dark. I didn't make note of it. I didn't think, but as I walked up to the door was shut when I opened it. The room was completely pitch black. There was nobody in there. I ran to the garage, told my dad. My dad is a very non-believer. And he was like, "No, it's just in your head. You're watching movies," I told my mom. I feel like my mom always knew what was going on in that house. She would always try to keep it calm by telling me it was just my imagination. I continued to see shadows out of the corners of my eyes or the closet. I would hear noises in the closet, rustling, things like that. We left to Mexico for vacation, and we came back. I overheard this conversation. My uncle was telling my mom that in my room, in the closet, he heard voices. He heard rustling. He felt something, a very negative presence watching him. My mom was like, "Oh, it's just our sister," because her sister had passed away. My uncle was like, "No, that is not a presence of our family. That is the presence of something bad." My mom chose to blow it off. Later on, I think I was in 6th grade. I don't remember a lot of stuff. Maybe I blocked it out because I was so scared. I used to love watching a haunting. I was sitting there watching with my dog. I started hearing my dog. She was growling at the hallway. I was like, "What's wrong?" She stopped. I continued to watch TV. Then she starts barking like crazy. I looked up and I saw this tall, dark figure walk from that office room to my parents' room. My dog was going crazy, barking, barking, barking. I grabbed her and I went outside and I was like, "Hey, this is what I saw." They always wanted to tell me that's not what you saw, that it was just in my head or in my imagination. I know it was it. After that, things started to pick up a lot. I started feeling things touch me and whisper right next to me. There was this one instance. My sister had come over. She was healing the relationship with our family. I was babysitting her son. He was toddler age 2 or 3. She left him in his playpen. They had all left to Walmart. I was left alone. I was in my bedroom cleaning, getting ready for school the next day. 'Cause it's Sunday, I felt like when somebody walks behind you. But somebody small. I thought it was my nephew. I was like, oh. He climbed out of his playpen's gonna go play. Next to my closet where I have all the toys, I start hearing rustling where my backpack was. Where all the toys were, I was like, hey baby, stop doing that. It just continued. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw his figure, a small little figure there. I was like, hey, you need to stop. Don't rip my stuff. I walk from my bed to where the closet is. There was nothing. I immediately ran out and went to go see where he was. He was sleeping in his playpen. I picked him up and ran outside and called my sister. Hey, you need to get home right now. I don't remember being this hysterical, but my sister said I was crying, screaming, telling her to come home. She came home as fast as she could and calmed me down. She didn't gaslight me. She knew what was going on in the house. She knew what was happening. Time goes by, we're moving out of this house. It was during recession, we were going to Mexico. I was packing my stuff. The same way my closet was open in the 3rd grade. The same everything I was doing, the same. I looked up again. My hangers were just moving. I was so mad at the circumstances of moving to a new country. I told that you need to stop. You need to leave me alone. I was so mad it just stopped. Those moving hangers just stopped. Completely stopped. It was shaking, and it stopped. Right before moving out, my mom was sitting down on the couch. We were watching novellas. I got upset at her. I left to my room and locked the door. I was sitting there writing in my diary. All of a sudden, I just feel my room shake like an earthquake. We used to have this religious figure. It was L.A. Virgin Maria. She's holding baby Jesus. And they're started rocking back and forth as soon as everything stops. I get up, run to my mom, and I'm like, hey mom, there was an earthquake. There was an earthquake. My mom just looks at me. She's like, what are you talking about? Are you okay? What's going on? I explained to her. She just was like, okay, we'll pray together. That's when my mom started really realizing that I wasn't lying. She knew the whole time. Fast forward to us being adults, living in a new house. We were all sitting down. I started telling my mom, remember when you would gaslight me so much? About this house, my sister starts laughing. They start laughing. They're like, we all experienced stuff in that house. They just wanted to protect me. Have me not be afraid. My sisters. They decided to play summoning games, mirror games, Ouija board in that room. The closet used to have mirror doors. After the seminary games, she dreamt about a demon, a presence trying to suck her into the mirror. She woke up with scratches on her cheeks. I think when my sisters played those summoning games, those mirror games, that Ouija board, they let something out. It wasn't good. I don't know if it was a demon, but it liked to mess with me. I liked to cause fear to make itself known. It was really scary. My mom, she tells me that in that room, she was never able to sleep. She felt like something was there. A negative, nasty presence watching her. My sister, when she would come over, she wouldn't sleep in there either. Everybody who stayed at that house, that was family. Not family. They always said the same thing. They heard ruffling in the closet or a voice, a really strong, negative energy watching upon them while they sleep. Whatever it was, it's still in that house right now. That house, it's alone. Nobody lives in there. There's abandoned cars there. Somebody owns it, but I don't think anybody stays or resides there anymore. I've never been back to that house. I did go back to my friend's house. He lives next door. We were waiting. I forgot before my friend was like, "Let's play Ouija board, come on. It'll be fun." I said, "Okay." "That's fine." We started to play. It's going smoothly. We look up protection. We do it in a safe way, but all of a sudden, the mood changes when my friend asks it the question. "Hey, do you know us?" It says yes. We ask it, "How long have you known us?" It doesn't reply. We asked, "Have you known us since we were kids?" Yes. I've started to feel exactly how I felt in that house. That same presence that I always felt. I don't know what it was, just a negative, dark presence. I told my friend, "We need to stop. We need to stop playing this. Whatever was in that house is channeling through your house. We need to stop." When we stopped, we closed everything, said goodbye, but I still felt very uneasy, like I was being watched, the same way I hadn't felt in a long time. My friend was like, "Oh, you're fine, you're fine." I went home that day. I still felt the same way. Lights would flicker. I don't know if it was a coincidence. I started waking up at odd times. 3 in the morning, 2:30 in the morning. I started feeling scared. My friend was like, "You should go to somebody who does a cleansing." We did a cleansing. She said whatever was in that house before was trying to attach itself to me again. The curandera brujera. I don't know what to refer to her as. Told me that. Not to play with those things because in my family, somebody had done brujeria to my dad. Whatever was out to hurt my dad was out to hurt us. I didn't know this, my mom. She did confirm that. My grandma and my aunt would do brujeria. They would do things like that. That's what the lady ended up advising me. That's why I feel like I believe a lot in that now. So later on, my mom met the lady that rented the home. She asked my mom, was there anything? Did anybody pass away in this house? My daughters are experiencing things that we can't explain. My mom said, I would just pray and be strong with your faith. In your religion, they can't hurt you. My mom didn't tell her what happened. It is not to scare her. She had just rented out the house. She was a single mom. She was happy. I still experience paranormal things. We moved into a different house. And this one wasn't as scary. It was comforting. We moved into a house and my dad works with word a lot. He was making my mom's friends a box for her ashes. Her ashes were in our house. I remember this night. They had took my door away because I was being a bad kid. I was falling asleep. My dog was barking at the hallway. I pushed him so he would stop. I woke up, he's still doing it. I decided to cover him with the blanket. As I'm falling asleep, I felt something. Like when your mom used to wake you up to go to school. If she would touch your face to wake you up. That's what it felt like somebody was doing to me. I brushed it off. I thought it was my dog. Then I felt it again. I opened my eyes. There was nothing in the room. My dog was just sitting there frozen. I think he was scared. He was silent. I was like looking everywhere. There was nothing in the room. We say it's that person, my mom's friend. because I used to call her Grandma. I feel like in a way I was her coming to say bye. She never got to say bye to me, but that's a different experience, not as scary as the ones in that house, where I felt things touching me or watching me. It's really scary to think there's things out there that like to cause fear, that want to hurt you, especially when you're a child. Anyway, thank you very much for listening. Keep it scary, everyone. See you soon. See you soon. Please listen to the story Bad Intentions. We lived in a neighborhood called Pilsen in Chicago. One of my aunts lived across the street, but I used to love to go over there, to be with my cousins. The houses in Pilsner are really big old structures. It was an old, predominantly immigrant neighborhood, but the houses are Victorian style. They have a big living room, big dining rooms, small bedrooms, big kitchens, a lot of hidden closets, and little places where you can hide. Play hide and go seek. They had little crawl spaces in some of the closets. Those were our favorite places to play. In my cousin's house, there was a closet that had little stairs. Inside the little stairs was another little crawl space. We used to go in there and talk about the things that kids talk about, but you can hear things that were going on in the other rooms. One time, me and my cousins were playing in there, and we heard my aunts did not like him. They called him a bruto, a bad man or a witch. My aunt had been married and loved her husband. To go with this uncle, they all said that he had practiced witchcraft on her, to get her to go with him. That was unheard of at that time for someone to leave their first husband and to go with someone else. And he was much, much older than my aunt. Much older. Most of my aunts were afraid of him. My uncle, he was calling out to things. He was saying bad words, calling for revenge, and we got scared. My cousins were telling me he sometimes does that when he gets angry at people. We're not supposed to go into his room or talk to him. We heard him stop and walk out of the room. I went into his room, into his closet. We found a little box, a little black box. Inside of it were little bottles of oils. Haircrossed is. He caught us looking in there. He yelled at his kids. "What are you doing in here? And you're never supposed to come in here." I got really scared and he told me to go home. I went home. I was really scared. My mom asked me what happened. What did you do over there?" 'Cause my aunt called her and said that I had been misbehaving and not to come back. My mom really reprimanded me very much. I was very sorry. She told me to apologize to my aunt and uncle, which I did. I couldn't get out of my mind the stuff that happened with the closet and the things that I found. I was sitting with my dad in the kitchen. I used to wait for my dad to get home to eat with him. My dad was a very religious man. He was always in the church. He was a deacon. Every time I had a problem at school or anything, I would always see him reading his Bible. He would always say, "There's a story in the Bible about that, about bullying. If I had a problem with my brother," he would say, the story of Joseph. He had problems with his brother. He was always talking to me about the Bible. I told him what happened. He was furious, very upset. He dropped his plate of frijoles, grabbed me from my hand and started opening the door to go across the street, and grabbed me and didn't say a word. My dad knocked on their door. He confronted my uncle. He said, "I don't ever want you to expose my daughter to any of that kind of stuff. You shouldn't do that to your children either." He looked at me and didn't say anything. My dad just left and he said, "You don't ever have to be afraid to tell me anything." Like that again. After that happened, one day I was homesick from school. I heard the doorbell ring. This happened a couple of weeks later. I opened the door. It was my uncle. It's 10 o'clock in the morning. My aunt wasn't with him. I didn't know why he was there. I told my mom my uncle's here. She was surprised. Also, she said, "Okay, let him in." She told me to keep him in the living room, so I just stayed there with him. I didn't talk to him and put my head down. He said, "Come here." I didn't want to go to him, so my mom called him to have some coffee in the kitchen. Then he laughed right away. I don't know what he came to tell my mother that day. Whatever it was, it scared my mom. That same night I went to sleep. I shared a room with my little brother. Something that caught my attention. I saw a light coming in through the corner of my bedroom. As I looked up, I saw a man. He had an old chauffeur kind of uniform on, and he had dark glasses on. His skin was really pale. I could just see his hand. His hand had a black ring on it. I could see the buttons of his jacket. He was looking at me. His face was so pale. His lips were blackish. He looked at me, and he had the dark glasses. I could see he was looking straight at me. He just stayed there, staring, peeking. I just froze, and I tried to pretend that it was a dream. I know I saw him. I kept closing my eyes and opening them up again. He was still there. He pointing at me and nodding, yes. I let out a scream and called for my mom. My mom came into the room and said, "What's going on?" I said, I saw this man. It's like, "Oh, you're just dreaming, don't worry. You did something you shouldn't have done. And now you're feeling bad. That's why you can't sleep." She stayed with me and she prayed with me. I went to sleep when she was next to me. I was very rattled for the next few days. Another night I was asleep. I heard a thump right in front of my bed. A big thump. I opened my eyes and I saw, like a cane that looked like a rain cane. A cane that makes the sound of rain. It was being held by a woman in a dark dress. There was a little girl with her that had sunken eyes. She had blondish hair. The little girl was so sad. She was being held by the wrist by this woman. The other hand she had on that cane. She looked at me, and she thumped again real hard on the floor. I knew she wanted me to get up. She was staring down at me. I didn't know what to do. I was frozen. She thumped again. I knew that I had to get up. I sat up in my bed, and she moved out of my way, towards the door to go out into the dining room. As I looked at her, she looked back at me like, "Are you coming?" I got up. I started to follow them into the living room. I don't know why I started to follow them. I knew I had to. I knew I did. I walked into the parlor. What looked like a parlor. The whole living room was different. We had a fireplace. A real fireplace in the home. My mom always put a chair there because the cold air would come into the house from the chimney. The chair wasn't there. There was a fire actually going in the fireplace. There were all these people sitting in the living room, looking at me. There was that man. He was dressed in that same chauffeur outfit, with his cap on the dark glasses. He started walking towards me. I saw the room. I was just amazed at the room. The furniture was different. The curtains. Everything was different. Except that there was a picture of my mom and dad I looked at it was my mom and dad's wedding picture. It's a black and white picture. And as I looked at it, it crashed down on the floor. Everything stopped. And I was standing in that dark living room. I was weeping and wailing. This time, my dad came into the... I was like, what is going on? What are you doing? I said, Dad. And I explained to him what had just happened. He just told me that everything was going to be okay. Nothing was going to happen. He believed me. Then my mom came and said, I think she's just making things up. My dad said, no, I do believe. My daughter, leave her alone. I was crying. I went back into the room. I couldn't get that out of my mind. Margarita's story continues right after this. Stay with us. Through the weeks, the teachers started to send notes home to my parents, saying what was wrong with me. My grades were dropping. There was a lot of arguing in the house. My mom and dad were fighting all the time. One of the arguments started to stem up because my uncle would no longer let my aunt come to visit. Our house and I was not allowed to go over there. I told one of my aunts what was going on, and she came and talked to me, and she said, I know what's going on. I know he's a brujo. What you have is something called Sosto. He scared you. He scared you. And you can't be afraid of those things. You can't give that power. You have to trust that all is going to be okay. There is always a power bigger than anything bad. For everything that is bad, if you believe in bad, you have to believe in good. She told me the next time that woman came, or anybody came into my room, to tell them to go away, that you are not going with them, that you are protected. Do not allow them to take you anywhere. The next time it happened. A few days later, I saw the man again. This time, he put his hand out like, you're coming with me. I said, no, I'm not going with you. I started to yell loud. And no, I'm not going. I thought I was talking. But I wasn't. I couldn't talk. But in my mind, I was saying, I'm not going with you. I'm not going. I was terrified of him. He started to walk towards me. At that time, my brother started to rumble in his sleep. I moved from my bed to his side of the bed. I lied down next to my brother and started to hug my brother. I closed my eyes. I said, I'm not going. I'm not going. I started hearing the thumping from the woman. I couldn't look. I kept saying, I'm not going. It seemed endless, but it finally stopped. It stopped, I felt like. There was clean air. I felt it leave. I felt the chills, the darkness, the dampy smell, because it came with a musty kind of smell, like wet dirt, but with garbage. It's a smell you can't ever forget, the musky, dirty smell of earth. And it was gone. I didn't smell it anymore. Weeks later, the arguing between my parents settled down. Things started going back to normal in our house. They would greet each other. They would start laughing together. We started being our regular family again. It was at that time that my uncle and aunt decided to move back to Puerto Rico. They decided they were going to pick up and take the kids back to Puerto Rico. But before that happened, my aunt got very sick. She had to be put in a home. She had a series of strokes. And my uncle left her to live in Puerto Rico. After that, we heard stories about him joining some kind of church and getting arrested for hurting children. Eventually, my aunt and him divorced. We heard nothing from him again. My other cousins had run-ins with him. He died a terrible death as well. He caught, gangrene. He died in prison for whatever it was that he did in Puerto Rico. I can't really say, I just know that was something against a child in a church. He was accused and found guilty. In Puerto Rico, he was a chauffeur, but I think it was in another aspect of him. Because he was a chauffeur in Puerto Rico. He used to drive a taxi or drive people. I do know that. He used to work for a rich family in Puerto Rico. Driving them around, I found that out much later. But that would make sense why I saw him like that. None of them want to see him at the end. They're all good people to this day. I adore my cousins. They grew up to be wonderful, wonderful people. They remembered their father with love. But not many of our other relatives agree with that. My aunt tells me how brave I was to be able to confront him. And that's a lesson I've learned. I have to always face my fears with courage. Years later, I would talk to my brother about this. I was telling him, I used to be really scared in that house. He said, "Oh yeah, the lady with the cane, right?" I'm like, "What?" He goes, "Yeah, I remember when she used to come into our room and try to take you away." I said, "Why didn't you ever say anything?" He said, "Because I didn't want her to take me. I'd rather her try to take you than to take me." He validated it for me, my brother told me. No matter where I am, I will always protect you. My brother died in 2020 from COVID. I still feel him around me. Sometimes when I'm scared or feeling lonely, I'll feel his presence around me, and I know that he's close. I've also learned now that there are some things that are always good here. And in the afterlife, you can embrace those. Thank you very much for listening. Keep it scary, everyone. See you soon. See you soon. Please listen to the story, A Night at the Resort. My story takes place, June of 2022. It happened at Cabo San Lucas, Mexico, at a 5-star resort. We were invited by some of my husband's friends, and it was a quick 3-day vacations. We were excited we arrived. The resort was beautiful, picturesque. It was busy with summer travelers. As we checked in, the front desk informed us that there was a room ready for us on the first floor, but if we waited until 4 o'clock, they could offer us a suite with an ocean view. So of course, we were going to take that. We accepted the offer, and we decided to wait till 4 p.m. We hung out by the pool, had some snacks, just enjoyed the sun. At 4 p.m., we were given our key, and we went up to the suite. As soon as I walked in, I was like, something doesn't feel right here. I really don't know what it was. It just felt very cold. Too much of a contrast from the sunny outside to almost like an icebox. I thought, maybe it's just the AC. Then I noticed that there was this large chair. That was positioned in the middle of the hallway, blocking the adjacent room. Sometimes in those hotels, you can open up to suites and hang out in both areas. I tried moving that chair out of the way, but it was so heavy it just wasn't going to happen. We walked into the bedroom suite. There was 2 queen beds. They were pushed all the way along to the walls. One of the beds was blocking the closet door. Very weird. The other was pushed all the way against the other wall, and it was blocking an entrance to the adjacent restroom. I thought that's an odd way to arrange a bedroom. But okay, my husband was really excited. He was opening up the curtains, excited about that ocean view, which was beautiful ocean crashing. You can see the pools beneath us. We dropped off our luggage, and we went to go enjoy the pool. We didn't return to the room until well past midnight. We showered, got ready for bed. I was very fussy. I was struggling to sleep. I tossing and turning and tossing and turning. Finally, I just started drifting off to sleep. I began to have this nightmare. And this nightmare, there was something. A presence on the right side of my body. It wasn't anything, but it was the feeling that something was there in this dream. I was just searching through a very dark room. Through a darkness, my hands were in front of me. I was looking for a light switch. As soon as I reached for that light switch, I felt it, and something grabbed my right wrist, violently pulled me to the left. At that time, I awoke with this gasp. My right hand was actually over my husband's body, and I was on top of him. I startled him awake. He just said, "Oh, you know you're okay. Stay calm. You had a nightmare." He kind of just tried soothing me. But I was not about to go back to sleep. I stayed awake until I saw that sunrise. It could have been around 4 in the morning. Day 2, we're out all day in the sun, having fun eating, drinking. We go back to the room well past midnight. As I'm in the restroom getting ready for bed, my husband starts turning off all the lights, making sure all the doors are locked, curtains are shut. He comes to the door of the restroom and says, "Have you been there the entire time?" I let him know that I was. I'll hurry up, so he can brush his teeth and get ready for bed. But he has this look on his face, like something is not okay. He says, "Swear to me you've been in the restroom the whole time." I'm like, "Yes, I swear I've been in the restroom. The whole time, what's going on?" He says, "I was waiting for you in the bedroom." And I started noticing that. The lights started turning off one by one by one by one. This is impossible because in the suite, there was a living room area, a kitchen area, a hallway, and there was about 8 or 9 light switches. They all worked together, not one by one. I didn't know what to say to him. He just said, "Do you believe me?" Of course I believe you. I shared with him ever since we got here. I just don't know about this room. I have a really weird feeling. I'm quite sensitive to paranormal activity. I do a lot of energy work. I'm open to all sorts of occult things. Something was off in that space. That night, we both had a really difficult time sleeping. As soon as we saw the sunlight, we were out that door. Our final day there. It was the same as the previous days. Out all day back, well past midnight, and we were both nervous and uncomfortable. But it was our last night, so whatever. Let's just enjoy. I begin to fall asleep. I was so fatigued. From the lack of sleep of the previous days, I begin to have that similar nightmare as the first night. I'm in a dark room. I'm looking for a light switch. Then something starts grabbing my right wrist. This time is different. My right wrist is being squeezed. It is going from my wrist to my elbow to my shoulder. It's starting to get painful. I'm trying to wake up, but I'm experiencing sleep paralysis. I get really upset, almost like a switch flipped. I was no longer fearful. I was upset that this entity was touching me. I began calling for my guardian angels. I called protective ancestors. I also Catholic, so I called for Archangel Michael. I really demanded for this entity to release me, and not touch me had crossed a boundary. At that moment, I awake with this deep gasp. I sit up straight, look at my right arm. It is red, and it hurts, as my husband awakes as well. I show him my arm. He holds me, and he says, "Okay, it's 6 a.m. Let's pack up. Let's get out of here." I am really upset that this entity is messing with me. I let my husband know I'm not scared right now. I'm not afraid. I want to check in through meditation to see what is going on in this room. I'm able to look up what is called the Akashic, records of people, businesses, places that is like a library of the universe, all records that have been, will be, and are through meditation. I can get information. So I called for some spiritual protection, and I began checking in what's going on here. I see messages of an image of a young woman. She was sexually assaulted in that room. That's what I'm getting. It seemed like she was drunk, and she was taken there. She willingly went with this young man. But she wasn't ready to be intimate. She just wanted to hang out. The guy held her down during this assault. That's why my arm was being held down. I started inquiring about the lights. What was going on with the lights in the bedroom? The information that I received there was that it was actually my husband's guardian, his mother who has transitioned. The lights turning on were to protect us, so that if the lights were on, we really wouldn't have experienced any of that energy. What I had really experienced in that room was the residual energy of that young woman. I felt much better once I knew what I had experienced. I cleansed myself when I got home. First, made sure that there was no energy that attached itself to me or my husband. I began sharing this experience with some of my friends who are healers and birth workers doulas. They let me know that. Because I'm now practicing this type of meditation and can channel. I'm kind of like a little antenna and my Wi-Fi is on, and I can see or sense various energies. Due to this, I have to carry spiritual protection when I stay, or I go places that have a lot of energy, such as hotels, hospitals, or historical sites. This also came into play when I went to Las Vegas, later on that fall, where I had taken some of my protection with me, and it flew across the room while I was sleeping, and I wasn't bothered at all. That was pretty wild. I went to Las Vegas November of 2022. I brought my little pouch of protective herbs. A friend of mine had sent me a little jar of yarrow. Yarrow is a flower, an herb that is for fevers, for stopping bleeding. But energetically, it's for protection and for boundaries. And she said that was very helpful to her when she travels. So I brought that little bottle with me and had a fantastic time with my friends. In the evening, I placed my little protective pouch next to the dresser. Next to me, and I put the bottle of yarrow flower essence next to me and blissfully went to bed. I don't know what time it could have been. In Vegas, all hours of the day, people are going in and out of the casinos. I heard while I was sleeping this loud crash, but I'd assume it was someone walking by and had knocked on our door, accidentally stumbling to their room. Didn't really pay any mind. The morning we awoke, I noticed that my little pouch was on the floor. Next to my bed, I figured, oh, maybe it's leathered out from the dresser. I was walking towards the restroom, which is next to the door of the hotel, and I see my little bottle of yarrow in front of the door. It is absolutely impossible that little bottle could have gotten there on its own, because that was a good 8 feet away, 8 feet in the diagonal to the left. I woke my husband up and I said, "Hey, did you happen to pick up my little bottle?" Which I knew he hadn't. That would have been odd of him. He just looked at me and said, "No, I didn't touch your things." I just picked it up and just laughed, because I felt it was. That crash that I had heard in the evening was that little bottle rolling to the front of the room, where maybe there was some energy that was not very light near me. I now always carry my little pouch and my little bottle whenever I'm going to stay. In spaces that are of high energy, we are all so sensitive. I think it's just, we always know when something's off, but we don't trust our instinct of what it is. We kind of just feel I'm off. It's not the room. I used to travel a lot, and I had always had a hard time sleeping in hotel rooms the very first night. At that time, I didn't understand. Why do I have such trouble sleeping? My justification used to be, well, I'm not in my bed. But it's more than that. It's all the people's energy that have been in that space that are making you restless. I would recommend get maybe an obsidian or onyx and rub that over the bed, just to absorb any energy that was left behind in that bed, because we can't do a smoke cleanse in a non-smoking room. Another thing that I would probably do is agua de Florida water that is used for cleansing. I pack that in a little spray bottle and spray to try to get it a little bit more calm and clear. Some people use vibration, like a little bell. The sound and the vibration kind of clears things away, but it's really our intention of I don't want to be bothered, and I'm just clearing away anything that doesn't belong to me. I don't want anything to attach and come with me. I just wanted the rest. Those travelers, I think, need to be very conscious of your spiritual hygiene, because it is definitely real, and especially for people that are more at tune. I gotta spray myself down. I gotta whatever. If you are of the Catholic faith, get yourself a little bit of holy water. Just rub yourself with your hands. Something that, is intentional that I'm cleaning. I'm not attaching to the story. I'm not attaching to anything attached with this. And fresh and clean all the time. Totally just learning this stuff. I come from a strong Catholic background, which I still am a cultural Catholic, but I'm also open to just all the beautiful and bizarre, universal things, that there's more than we could ever comprehend. But the more you know, the more you have to be conscious of, okay, I'm not feeling weird for no reason. There's something my body, my cells are telling me something's off. I need to trust myself. Idalia sent me a few items to help with protection while I travel following the recording of the story. Thank you very much for that, Idalia. I am aware that listening to so many true experiences like this may come with consequences. Thank you very much for listening. See you soon. See you soon. Please listen to the story Message Through the Board. This story happened in 2014 in Murrieta, California. I worked at a grocery store. A couple of my co-workers had gone to this old mining town, near Joshua Tree then, to these old gold mines. They brought a Ouija board with them and were able to communicate with some miners that had passed in the area at the time. I was very skeptical about these kinds of things. I was like, oh, if you guys are ever going to do it again, I'd be really interested to see what that's like and experience that for myself. A couple weeks later, one of the girls that owned the Ouija board invited me to go with her to her grandmother's grave. We went to the cemetery around sunset and set up a blanket. Just a nice little area on top of her grave. The girl that's grandmother's grave we were at, LED the whole thing. Me and one other girl were there as well. There were 3 of us total. We are sitting there. We all three had our fingers on the planchette. I had mine barely touching it, hovering it, 'cause I'm skeptical. We sign on the Ouija board. We go to say hello. That's what she told us we're supposed to do. You sign on. We go to say hello. She starts asking questions. Is there anyone here with us? We didn't really get any responses. The planche kept moving from T and to U. T to U. It kept going back and forth very slowly. That was the only response we got the whole time. We sat there for 30 minutes, maybe an hour, just seeing if anything else would happen. Nothing else happened, so we gathered up our gear. They had the idea to go to this, what is referred to as the Haunted Mill. That's in Marietta. It's a spooky place that teenagers go at night, just to get spooked out. I had been a couple times to drive by, but they were like, let's go do the Ouija board over there. They thought we'd get some sort of response. We go over to the mill. It's pitch black out. The mill had been vandalized and broken into a lot over the years. There was a chain link fence and barbed wire on the top. We didn't bother going inside of it, but we thought just merely being in its vicinity was enough. We set up the Ouija board and a little blanket across the street. There was a dirt field across the street. It was just us, dirt field and the mill. All three of us had her finger on the planche. We sign on to say hello. The girl who was leading asked if there was anybody with us. This time, the planche went to yes. She asked a few other questions. One of them was, what is your name? It started to spell my grandfather's name, which is not a common name in the States. The hairs on the back of my neck were standing up. And it started to spell my last name. My last name is Dutch and very hard to spell. Even people that have known me for years have a hard time spelling my last name. I immediately was going into fight or fight mode. I was really scared, I figured. The girls I was with probably didn't know my grandfather's name. At first, I thought they were pulling a prank on me or something. I looked at them and was like, oh, this is my grandfather's name that it just spelled. My friend continued to ask questions. She said, do you have something that you want to say to Molly? It went to yes again. What's your message from Molly? It spelled Getready. I said, get ready. She said, for what? It spelled DE, a TH death. I immediately was having an out-of-body experience. We signed off. My two friends were very scared. They grabbed their stuff, ran off to their car. I had been sitting crisscross, applesauce the whole time. I went to stand up. My legs were numb. I fell into this ditch that was there. I lost my car keys. Having a panic attack, I look up and my friends are at their cars. They're getting ready to go. I couldn't find my car keys, so I pull my phone out, get my flashlight. I'm looking for my keys. I finally find them. I run into my car and drive off and don't look back. We let each other know when we got home. Over the next couple of weeks, we were checking in with each other a lot to see how everyone was feeling. We were all really freaked out by it. In the months after that, even years. I have asked them repeatedly if they've ever had another experience like that, or if they were possibly playing a prank on me, and they've never owned up to it if they were. But that's something that has scared me. It's been almost 10 years. It's still something that I think about. From what I experienced, I don't think either of them messed with a Ouija board. Again, after that, the logical side of me wants to say that they were messing with me, but I think it would have been really hard for them to find my Dutch grandfather's name somewhere, and to know that that's something that would scare me. I went in with the title of a skeptic, and I feel like maybe I was targeted because of that. I would say, know what you're getting yourself into. Listen to stories like these before you do something like that. I haven't been to that specific area because I don't live there any longer, but I in general like abandoned places, spooky places. I actually told my dad the story within the last couple years. The grandfather mentioned in the story is my dad's dad. I never told him. I didn't want him to have a weird memory of his dad after hearing it, but I wanted to share it with him. He adamantly is like, my dad would never try to scare you like that, and would never tell you to get ready for death in a negative, scary way. If he had said that, he would have meant it, as in, live your life to the fullest. Always prepare, be prepared. That you don't always have the promise of tomorrow. That's giving me a piece about the story too. I don't think it was my grandfather. I never did research into this because I'm too scared. But one of my friends that I experienced this with, she had done some research into demons and spirits. She said there is a demon that will imitate relatives, with repeating letters, like we had experienced at the cemetery. If that's the case, I'm really glad we signed off when we did, and didn't do it again. This experience just gave me a really well-rounded view of this kind of thing. I don't consider myself a skeptic or a full believer. I put it into the category of something unexplained, something I might never know the answer to. Don't leave just yet. We have 3 stories today. Have you listened to them yet? They're up and available now as separate episodes. You can share your own story with me over on scarystory.com for a chance to have it featured on an upcoming episode, and to listen ad-free. Try out Scary Plus over on scaryplus.com. Completely free for 14 days. You can also find the button somewhere on your app. Right now. Thank you very much for listening. Keep it scary, everyone. See you soon. Please listen to the story Chased by Spirits, My Family's Paranormal Encounter. I grew up in this really tiny town called Cleveland, Utah. The house was known as the very first post office in this really small town when Utah was founded. It was so old that when we did some renovations on the house, we would cut into it and see that it was logs on the inside. That's how old it was. It was an old log post office. My mom and dad decided to create a bedroom in the attic space upstairs. They cut a hole in the ceiling and built these really rickety, steep kind of stairs that went up into this little attic space. The top right corner of the room would be where the stairs would come up. Right at the top of those stairs, in the bottom right corner, was my bed, up against the wall, right in that corner, right there across the room. In the bottom left corner would be my sister's bed, and then in the top left corner was my brother's bed. I used to see this really dark shadow every night. I would wake up in the middle of the night. Somebody was in the room with me, watching me. I would open my eyes, and there would be this dark shadow standing over by my brother's bed. Staring down at him, it was the shape of a man, but it was just a really dark shadow. That would stand there. It would move from my brother's bed, and it would just float across the room, standing over the top of my sister's bed, watching her. If I felt myself waking up, I would keep my eyes closed and wait for my brother to move, or wait for my sister to move, and then I would open my eyes. Then he would be standing right by me, staring down at me, watching me sleep. I was so scared I would take all of my stuffed animals, put them all the way around me, And then I take the biggest stuffed animal that I had, and I put it right over the top of me and tuck it in to make it look like. The stuffed animal is the one sleeping in the bed. I think around in my teenage years. We moved out of that house, and I didn't have any other experiences growing up until later in life when I met my husband. We had all of our kids at that time, and he was stationed in the Air Force, and he got deployed to Iraq, Afghanistan. He got deployed to Korea for a year. One of the funny things about me and my husband, we were really into the TV show Ghost Hunters. There was this one episode where they went to the Stanley Hotel. It's the actual hotel that Stephen King himself was staying in when he had those experiences. That scared him so much that he wrote the book, The Shining. This hotel is over 100 years old in Estes Park, Colorado. It's gorgeous. On this episode, they decide that they're going to split up into these separate rooms in the hotel that are known for the most paranormal activity. In the hotel, one of them is on the 4th floor, room 412. Back to me and my husband. My husband is deployed to Iraq. I want to surprise him with something. Just pretty cool for him coming home. He's been gone for 6 months. I decided I was going to book us a stay at the Stanley Hotel so that we can go investigate ghosts. I decided to book that exact room 412. We drive to the Stanley, and you walk into this hotel, and there's this big staircase. It goes up the center, and then it splits off to the right and the left on both sides, and you can go up to the other rooms. Next to the staircase, it has this really awesome, super old elevator that is, one of those metal elevators that you have to close the gate on. Old, rickety, and really loud. We get our key for the room, so we get in the elevator and we go upstairs. Step off the elevator, and the room that is haunted is right next to that elevator. We get in the room and go check out the closet. This closet is 100 years old, full hard wood. It's got one of those really old doorknobs on it that are really hard to turn. It's super heavy. On the backside of the closet is that elevator. We check that out. We check the room out. It was really pretty. It had a really old bathroom in it. The really super old Victorian sink with on the inside. We decided to go get some dinner and walk around the hotel for the rest of the evening until bedtime. So nothing happened to us that night. When we were walking around checking out the hotel, and we took the tour. The tour guide was this really cool old guy that had actually done the tour for Ghost Hunters. When they came, he was their tour guide. We noticed that on our tour. The guy goes right up to the room we're staying in, stood outside of the door, and sit there and tell the stories about what happens in there, how people have lost things. Me and my husband are just sitting there thinking, yeah, we're staying in this room tonight. We even told the people that were on the tour with us. We're like, yeah, this is our room. We're going to stay in there. You guys want to look in there? And they were all pretty excited to go in and check out the room. And we ended the tour and went to eat dinner. And then we went back up to the room. And it was time for bed. We decided that we were going to go and take a shower. Together, we're in the bathroom, talking about how nothing's happened to us. It doesn't seem very creepy. There was 3 bulbs in this one light fixture above the bathroom sink. As soon as we were talking about this happening, the light bulbs all shattered. We got out of the shower and called downstairs. I told the lady at the desk what had happened. She said that they were going to send somebody up to come and take care of it. Things like that happen all the time in that room. I just don't know what could have caused that. They came up, they cleaned it up, They left the room, and me and my husband get into bed. And we're laying there, and I'm trying to go to sleep. This bed is facing the closet. So if you're sitting up in bed, you're looking right at the closet. I get this really dark, heavy feeling. There is something in this room. I open my eyes. I look up. Right above the bed is a fan. A ceiling fan, and right next to the ceiling fan, there is this woman floating there. She had a really long, dark hair. I'm looking at her. I start grabbing my husband's arm, shaking him, and I'm like, "Honey, do you see her? She's right there." And I'm hyperventilating. He wakes up, sits right up, and he's like, "Where? Where?" And I'm like, "She's right there in front of us." At that point, she starts moving towards me. And I take a breath and I'm like, "Hi." She stops, tips her head sideways. We laid down to go back to sleep, and I could not go to sleep. The morning after, we went downstairs to go tell the people that I had an experience. There's a tour guide there. And I tell her what had happened to me last night. And she kind of just, "Yeah, that happens all the time." It seemed like she didn't believe me, didn't take me seriously. We decided we were going to go look around the town and check out the hotel more. It's pretty big. It's got a few outbuildings too. We spent the day just being tourists. We get back to the hotel. My husband decides what he's going to do. He grabs this little L, no smoking sign that is sitting on top of the dresser, and he's going to put it right in front of the closet door. Slide it right under it just in case something happens. We go to sleep, and nothing else happens that night. The next morning, the closet door is closed, but the little LS sign was out in the middle of the floor. I'm feeling really uneasy about staying in this hotel and room because we had one more night there. I call my mom. I'm bawling. I don't want to stay here. And my husband's being a sweetheart, sitting there telling me it's going to be okay. We just got one more night. Let's just stay here. And I said, "Okay, we'll just stay because it was paid for that night." Actually, nothing happened to us. We just woke up and left to go back home. I would absolutely stay at the Stanley Hotel again. The hotel was beautiful. The food was amazing. From their little old-fashioned restaurant. And the rooms were really comfortable. Really scary, but really comfortable. I would not stay on the 4th floor again. Not at all, not in any of the rooms on the 4th floor. Forget it. Throughout our marriage, we have had quite a few paranormal, inexplicable things that have happened. After we went and stayed at the Stanley Hotel, we had moved out of the house that we were staying. At the time, we moved on to base housing at Hill Air Force Base. Cabinet doors would open and close. You would hear whispers or voices throughout the house. When I was in my room laying on the bed, I would be reading, and right above the book, I would see this little boy's head just quickly dash past the bottom of the bed. One other instance. Me and my husband were laying in our bed watching TV. All of a sudden, all of the stuff that was in there, our bathroom, fell off of the shelves into the bathtub. Another time that I was laying in bed, all of a sudden, I felt these little steps stepping next to me, from my feet all the way up to my head. And I turned and I looked, and there was nothing there. We decided that we wanted to name this little ghost. And I'm like, how about we name him Billy? At that exact same time, my husband said that in his head popped the name Billy. After this house, we had moved off a base. It was Halloween, and we felt this ghost presence had followed us. Because same thing started happening in this other house. I took my kids to go see my mom for Halloween. While we were there, I was on the phone talking to my husband, and all of a sudden he says, there was a little boy that just ran across the floor, down the bed, out of the corner of my eye. The kid ran across the room. We're sitting there talking about it, and then all of a sudden you hear in the living room the sound of one of my Halloween decorations go off. This Halloween decoration, it was broken, the motion active part of it was busted, and it was an old gravestone that would crack open and scream at you. The only way for it to go off was for somebody to push it. We moved to Montana. We had a bunch of things happen in that house. My children saw these things. My son Lincoln, he is very sensitive. A couple of days ago, I was in my room. My son's girlfriend. I was going to show her something on my phone. I was walking down my hallway, passing the kitchen, and out of the corner of my eye, I see my son standing in the kitchen. In front of the sink, his back was to me. I thought, okay, I'm going to go show Lincoln first. When I turned to look into the kitchen, he's not there. He is not there. There is nobody there. He comes walking in through the family room. In the back door, I explained to him. This ghost, or mimic, or whatever this was, looked just like him. I have no idea what that was. But it scared the crap out of me. That's the first time something's happened to me, personally, in this house. I'm hoping nothing else happens here. I'm almost over the whole ghost thing. Haha, balding. We have had other situations where we would be sitting out on the porch. We live up in Willow, Alaska. It's a really tiny town in the middle of the forest. We have neighbors that aren't very close to us. We would be sitting out on the porch, and you would hear strange howls, moans, and growls over in that forest. Over there, across the lake, we're avid hunters. We know what it sounds like when a moose is in heat. Just doesn't sound anything like that. Me and my son and his friends, we always talk about shapeshifters up here all the time. Skinwalkers is a big deal in Alaska. A skinwalker can take certain forms of people or things. I don't know if it could have possibly been something like that. I can't tell you. I really have no idea what it could possibly have been. I don't know if it's the places that we've lived in, or if it's because my side of the family, is so sensitive to ghosts, or if it's Lincoln himself. If he attracts these things coming to us everywhere that we've been, in all of the houses that we've lived in. I haven't really been very scared, even though we've had these experiences happen to us. Every time I'm thinking that we're in a new place, it's going to be great. There's nothing going to happen. Then something happens. You can share your story with us over at True, Scary Story.com, and to listen without ads, and support the show at the same time. Visit scaryplus.com. If you're following the show, I'll talk to you next week. Thank you very much for listening. Keep it scary, everyone. See you soon. Everyone, see you soon. Everyone.